Okay, thanks everybody for your patience. We're going to start off with the special session of the Eagle Mountain Community Facilities District Board. And a roll call, please.
Chair Kavanaugh,
Here.
Vice Chair Brown,
Here.
Board Member DePorter,
Here.
Board Member Magazine,
Yep.
Board Member Tolis,
Here.
and Board Member Leger.
Here.
I don't see him.
Do we have any
I'm ready.
call to the public?
No, Chairman.
Consideration of approving the Eagle Mountain Community Facilities District Board meeting minutes of June 5th, 2018. There is no staff report. Any speaker cards on this item?
No, Chairman.
Council discussion? Can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman, 6-0.
Consideration of Resolution EMCFD 2018-03, levying upon the assessed valuation of the property within the district, subject to ad valorem taxation, a certain sum upon each $100 of valuation sufficient to raise the amounts estimated to be required in the annual budget, specifically for the purpose of paying principal and interest upon bonded indebtedness, all for fiscal year beginning on July 1st, 2018, and ending on June 30th, 2019. Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. You'll recall that you passed the budget for this particular improvement district. I'm going to go ahead and call upon our finance director who will just give a very brief report on this.
Mayor and Council, Eagle Mountain Community Facilities District issued bonds in 1996 to repay the costs associated with infrastructure improvements. The bonds are repaid annually from an ad valorem taxes collected from the residents of the community. The 2018 assessed valuation for Eagle Mountain is estimated at $29,859,894. The fiscal year 18-19 debt service payment is $405,768. Therefore, a tax levy of approximately 1.3724 per $100 of assessed valuation, that compares to 1.2877 last year, will provide sufficient revenue for the annual debt payments and administrative costs. The bonds will be retired in fiscal year 2021. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Craig. Any questions from the board? No, any speaker cards?
No, Chairman.
Can I get a motion for this one?
Move to approve.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
And I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, with that, I open the special session of the Cottonwoods Maintenance District Board. Roll call, please, Bev.
Chairman Kavanaugh,
Here.
Vice Chair Brown,
Here.
Board Member DePorter, Board Member Magazine, Board Member Tolis, and Board Member Leger.
Here.
Any call to the public?
No, Chairman.
Consideration of approving the Cottonwoods Maintenance District Board meeting minutes of June 5th, 2018. There is no staff report. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Chairman.
Any council discussion? Not, can I have a motion?
Approval. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consideration of Resolution CMD 2018-03, assessing upon individual lots and parcels within the district a certain sum sufficient to raise the amount estimated to be required in the annual budget to provide funds for maintenance of certain pedestrian areas, parking, and parkways, all for fiscal year July 1st, 2018, and ending on June 30th, 2019. Grady?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, again, this is very similar to the Eagle Mountain Community Facilities District. This is the Cottonwoods Maintenance Improvement District, and our finance director will give a brief report on this.
Cottonwoods Maintenance District was formed by the council in June of 1999 for the purpose of maintaining or improving the common areas of the Cottonwood subdivision. The Maintenance District provides for the maintenance of the common area, which is performed by town staff. Annual cost is repaid through a property tax assessment of $114.52 per property owner, levied by the town and collected by the county. The estimated levy includes the contract cost for landscaping, as well as establishing a reserve for future exterior wall maintenance and an additional reserve for unplanned maintenance. Happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thanks, Craig. Any questions from council? Any speaker cards?
No, Chairman.
Okay, then I just need a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we're on to our regular meeting. I will call that to order and ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America. To the republic for which it stands. One nation, under God. Indivisible. With liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Is Pastor Tom Daly here? From Trinity Lutheran Church? Anyone here from Trinity Lutheran Church? Okay, then. All right. Well, why don't we just have a moment of silence? Okay, thank you. Everybody can be seated. And roll call, please, Bev.
Mayor Kavanaugh,
Here.
Vice Mayor Brown,
Here.
Councilmember DePorter, Councilmember Magazine, Councilmember Leger,
Here.
and Councilmember Tullis.
Okay, our next item is a proclamation for Drowning Impact Awareness Month. It is in August, but we always like to do it before the summer since our swimming season has already started in our swimming pools. Whereas Drowning Impact Awareness Month will raise awareness that the number and impact of child drownings in Arizona affects everyone. And whereas the drowning incidents in Arizona take the lives of the equivalent of a classroom of children each year. And whereas a child drowning can happen to any family, regardless of education, race, or socioeconomic background. And whereas families can take simple steps to protect their children around water to avoid the tragedy of the unnecessary loss of life. And whereas water safety remains a priority for Arizona families, communities, and government. And whereas keeping children healthy and safe is the goal of the Fountain Hills Rural Metro Fire Department and other prevention institutions in Arizona. And whereas raising awareness will increase understanding and education of effective ways to prevent drowning. Now therefore, I, Linda M. Kavanaugh, Mayor of the Town of Fountain Hills, Arizona, do hereby proclaim the month of August 2018 as Drowning Impact Awareness Month in Philadelphia, in Fountain Hills. Where did I get that from? I'm thinking, all right, I'm thinking back then, August. That's funny. Okay. That's a good way to start the meeting, with a laugh, right? All right, now, let's see. Do we have any presentations? Grady?
Yes, we have something that wasn't scheduled and not actually on the agenda, but it's very important that we acknowledge and recognize our retiring town clerk, who's probably very frustrated that I'm even doing this tonight.
She's making that face.
It's with great sadness to share with the public that Bevelyn Bender, our town clerk, who's been with us for 24 years, is going to be retiring July 5th. She has been our town clerk for about 15 years. She began working for the town of Fountain Hills shortly after incorporation in 1994. For nearly 30 years, the town of Fountain Hills had only 2 town clerks, and Bev has been one of those. She is certified as a Master Municipal Clerk. She received that in 2010. She's maintained continuous recertifications as an election official by the Arizona Secretary of State. Bev was elected president of the Arizona Municipal Clerks Association in 2016, and this year serves as the immediate past president. For those of you who are not really sure, they see the town clerk here at meetings, but really may not know really what the job entails. The clerk's job is responsible for conducting our local elections, serving as the official records manager of the municipality's records, which that's a big, heavy requirement because under state law, this one individual is ultimately responsible for the maintenance of all of our municipal records. The position also is responsible for recording the council's legislative actions, assisting the public with their public records requests and other administrative functions as required under Arizona state law. Again, Bev's last day is July 5th. She's looking forward to traveling by RV with her husband Ray to Colorado and beyond. She's also looking forward to spending more time with her grandchildren and having more time to enjoy her hobbies. While it was Bev's desire to retire quietly, it was appropriate, I think, to provide her at least a modest send-off tonight. At this point in time, I'd greatly appreciate Mayor Kavanaugh meeting me at the podium so we could present her with a small token of the town's appreciation.
Wonderful gift for you. And we are going to miss you so much. And I'm going to put it on you if that's okay.
It's the fountain pen.
Absolutely. Wow, you got a gold one with a diamond. That's beautiful. Would you like to say something? Bye.
You got one funny story? I know you got plenty.
I don't think there's any I can share. Wait, hold the picture.
Thank you.
I was just told I'm in trouble.
We love surprises. I was just so nervous we weren't going to get it right for you. And I think some members of the council might have something to say also. And you know I can't shut them up, especially Alan. There he goes. Go, Alan.
I just want to say that, and I've said this before, Bev is absolutely the consummate professional. I've been constantly amazed at how she can keep all of those balls in the air and answer all our questions. I know we've probably had some good candidates for the position, but I wouldn't want to be following in her footsteps. She has done, as far as I'm concerned, the job of 3 people, and I want to tell her how very much appreciated it is.
Sure, I just wanted to say, I'm just lucky to call Bev a friend as well. I mean, besides all the amazing work she does here for the town, she's just a really good person as well. If you go around the community and you tell them what you do, they know that we're lucky enough to have Bev, and I think that's very cool that she was here for so long. So thank you so much for your time.
Anybody else?
So
Vice
Bev,
Mayor?
thank you. You've been a hero to me, I can tell you. You keep us in line at the meetings, you keep us coming and going, but I will say to the candidates that are in the audience this evening, you have no idea what you're losing, because she truly makes running for a council seat easy. She helps you with your financials. She makes sure that you get them right. I mean, I just can't say enough good about Bev Bender, and thank you. I've so enjoyed working with you.
I'd second that. You've been fantastic, and I appreciate all the reminders that you send out when things are due, and
I always wondered if you read them.
oh, yeah. I did. I'm sure we all appreciate those. So thank you for all you've done, and congratulations on your retirement. I think you should go rent that movie RV and get ready.
Bev, it's been an
Mayor,
honor to,
Mayor, if I
oh,
may?
I'm sorry, Henry, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Sorry I wasn't there to celebrate your occasion this evening, Bev, but I'll catch up with you in person here shortly. I think it's hard to top what's been said with respect to you as a person as well as a professional. I've been in the workforce for a long, long time in private, corporate, educational, government settings, and you're one of the most competent folks that I've ever worked with. But in addition to your skill set and all the council members that have worked with you, you are the go-to person when we need information, and oftentimes when we have questions that are difficult to get our arms wrapped around. So once again, job well done, faithful servant, and I certainly will miss you. And I think in addition to the work, and I think everyone would attest to this, a smile on your face, a positive attitude regardless of the circumstances, and you just kind of brought joy to the job, and serving for 12 years, it's just been such an honor and a pleasure to have an opportunity to work with you, and do enjoy your vacation. And as I said, I'll catch up with you in person here shortly, but thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, it's tough to go last because they've said just about everything that I wanted to say and everything that I'm feeling. But I do want to tell you, as a mayor, it's been an honor to serve with you. I know you were here when my husband was on the council, so you got to serve with two Kavanaughs. And just having you at Town Hall every single day has been such a great pleasure as a friend, and just helping all the staff and what you do for everyone up in Town Hall, and anyone who ever asks you for anything, you're there for them, and always with a smile on your face. It's been a great honor working with you, and I know we'll stay friends. So have fun in your retirement, you and Ray.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Isn't that nice? That was cool. All right, let's go on to call to the public.
Mayor, we have two cards. Two speakers, Harris Deach and then Cecil Yates.
Okay, just remind everybody who doesn't know how things work, call to the public is just when anyone can get up and say anything for 3 minutes. It's anything that is not on the agenda, and we are not allowed to comment on it, but we would take notes. So if it's something we need to look into later on, we will take notes, just so. So I see a lot of new faces here. I just want to make sure everybody knew how it worked. Okay, Harris, you're up.
Warren, but I'm here now, and I'll have one subject and one subject only.
Okay, now first say your name and that you live in
Harris Deach.
Fountain Hills.
Live in Fountain Hills.
That's it, go.
Last 20 years, as you know how to reach me anyway.
Yes.
I'm here for school children's safety. That's the only thing that's on my mind, and I don't care about anything you talked about, which I have no idea what it was anyway. I want the school children safe. My kids are grown, so they're out of the system, but there are others in here that is not. That's the only subject I want, and I'll hold all of you personally responsible if one of our kids get killed, like in Parkland or Texas or Georgia, and I'll come back with an army of police to arrest you. I'll hold you for criminal negligence. Protect our children. I know how to do it myself, but nobody asked, so that's the end of that. Thank you for your time. I'm leaving.
Okay.
Cecil Yates.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Cecil Yates, 14-year resident. I'm here, I'll piggyback a little bit, Bev. I've had the honor of working with you as well. Without echoing what everyone else has said, I have the luxury of working in all the municipalities, and you've set the bar in every municipality. She is known from Surprise to Queen Creek, Cave Creek to Buckeye, Tonopah, probably for that matter. So excellent job. I'm actually here, one more order of business that I was working on as I was sitting on council, and that was the water main on Sunridge Drive. As you know, we've had multiple breaks throughout the years. I was working with Sunridge HOA as well as EPCOR. Had the opportunity to meet with EPCOR last week, and they have agreed, and right now as we speak, they are doing the plans, the engineering and the architecture plans to replace the main on Sunridge Drive. They plan on starting the work probably by the end of the year, early next. The question now is, do we want it done, and to coordinate with the town, of course, do we want it done over the winter months when we have heavy visitation, or next summer where the water usage is the highest? So we need to reach out to Sunridge HOA. I've already begun that. North Heights, Eagles Nest, all those residents over there, and kind of find out. But they are doing this on their dime, and hopefully this will take care of the problems that we've experienced over there. I had a few more things to report, but I understand Town Manager Grady Miller is going to be reporting on EPCOR, and so we'll leave it up to that. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you,
Okay,
Council.
thank you. And that's it? Okay, we're going to our consent agenda items. We have two. I'm looking for a motion to accept as written.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Our regular agenda item, consideration of appointing 3 citizens to the Sister Cities Advisory Commission for a 3-year term beginning June 19, 2018, and ending June 18, 2021. They're signing up for a good 3 years. I move to appoint Carol Carroll, Vicki Dirksen, and Bev Tall. Can I get a second? Second, okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And I just want to add that Carol Carroll was appointed to this commission in June 2016. She has served as chair for the 2 years. The commission was formed actually in 2016, so Carol was the first and only chair. Bev Toll was appointed to the commission in June of 2016. She served as the vice chair for the first year. Vicki Dirksen is new to the commission, but certainly not new to volunteer work in Fountain Hills. She's one of the leaders in the academy, the Leadership Academy, and she's been with them since they started, and she's also done lots of other volunteer work in town, so great to have her on the commission. We thank all of you, all 3 of you, for volunteering to serve once again. Are any of the 3 commissioners here? I can see them. Okay. Well, anyway, let's give them a big hand because they're great volunteers. Okay? Awesome. Okay. Now I'm going to change the order of our agenda items. That's one thing that I have a privilege of doing if I want to do it. And I was thinking how many people are here for item number 14, 15, and somehow on the agenda that ended up way at the bottom. So we're going to do that one next, out of order. So we are going to start with item number 14. And this is just declaring a public record. I'll remind you of that. So we just have to do that first, and then we'd like to have, if there are any speakers, we'd like to have them during 15. We'll have all the speakers, if that's okay with everybody. So with that, I will, let's see. Okay, there's one staff report for 14 and 15. 14 is consideration of Resolution 2018-46, declaring as a public record that certain document filed with the town clerk and entitled Section 11-1-7J, nuisance party. Grady and Mitesh.
Thank you. Just want to give the council a brief background on this. We have, from time to time, these nuisance party houses. You probably remember in the past we had the Golf Zoo. And basically what it is we have these short-term rentals where people will often rent the home and they'll overwhelm the home with more people or more occupants of what the home is designed for. There have been, in the last 6 months or so, a particular street in town here that you'll probably hear from some of the residents who are here tonight to speak on behalf of this ordinance that have really been causing an issue with their quality of life. In fact, they really haven't had a lot of good quality of life. They haven't been able to enjoy, peacefulness in their homes on weekends. So based on the issues before us, we found that there were a number of other communities, primarily those that have universities, where they have these nuisance party issues, and in-state. So like Flagstaff, Tucson, Tempe, have had these similar issues, but primarily with students. In asking the town attorney to research this further, plus with the residents who had done a little bit of their own research and recommended that we try to do something to provide our Sheriff's Department more tools to help tackle this. We did come up with a draft ordinance, which is before you tonight. So basically, just to tell you what this is and how it works, is we have basically a nuisance party is defined as a gathering of 12 or more persons. I want to make a correction in the staff report. Before you tonight, it says 10, but the ordinance and all the attached materials, we did have it at 10 at one point, but we increased it to 12. And that is basically defined as those situations that involve disturbances such as excessive noise or traffic, obstruction of public streets by crowds or vehicles, drinking in public, the service of alcohol to minors or consumption of alcohol by minors, fighting, disturbing the peace, and littering. Also, another measure of this is also both the owner and non-owner responsible parties are held responsible for violations of the ordinance. And then civil penalties range from the initial warning to an owner or to the responsible party up to a violation of $1,000 for the third nuisance. And by the way that our ordinances work here in town is beyond that, it becomes a criminal matter. So this is a very serious situation, and we're asking council consideration to consider passing this on an emergency basis tonight, because typically we have 30 days that things like this would go into effect or ordinances go into effect. However, we are concerned about the summer and with more swim parties and other things like this that might be really creating a big ruckus in our community. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mitesh, who may be able to go ahead and fill in some additional details I may have left off.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. The way that this ordinance is drafted, it is applicable townwide to private property. Due to the, as you well know, due to the Airbnb laws that were passed by the state, we can't single out just short-term rentals. So it's of even keel and applies to a gathering of 12 or more that is causing a public disturbance across townwide boundaries. But in comparing our ordinance here, draft ordinance, to the ones that Grady mentioned, we've actually made it a little bit more forgiving to town residents that may be caught up or called on a nuisance party violation. A lot of the other cities out there have it constrained down to 5 people. We thought it was not appropriate because we have families living in town, and to raise it up to that 12-person mark. Also, we've provided, which the MCSO already has discretion, but we made it very evident that MCSO has the ability, or the town and code enforcement officer, to provide warnings. That way, it's based off of the discretion of the officer responding to the complaint, whether or not to issue that citation if a warning hasn't been heeded by the occupants of the party. Another key significance, as Grady mentioned, is there are 2 paths. We've also addressed the fact that you could have a responsible party that is different from the owner because, the owner may not be present. It could be a short or long-term rental. The owner may just not be home, and they're guests or children having a party in the owner's absence. So you can go down 2 paths to give a notice of violation to a responsible person that is present at the party, and then also once that citation is provided to the town can then look up who the property owner is and issue a notice of violation to the property owner as well.
Mitesh, just for clarification too, just so the audience understands this isn't a situation where we go back to the same residents a couple times and giving them warnings. It's progressive. So the initial one is a warning, and if this is within a 90-day period of time, then we'll kick it up to the second level, which is a fine, and then the third level, So just so people understand, we're not continuously just giving warnings and not
Correct.
following up with corrective action.
Yep, and we've got it drafted, so it's a warning, then the second violation, third violation, and also for the responsible person at the party. For instance, if an officer shows up at a party, asks them to be quiet, shut down the party, and they say yes, and then the officer has to return at that same time, same night, the officer would have the discretion at that point to issue a notice of violation and a citation.
Okay. Okay, so this first part, number 14, is just declared a public record, so if I could get a motion to do that, and then we'll have discussion on number 15.
So moved.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Now we'll go on to number 15, consideration of ordinance 18-09, amending Town Code, Chapter 11, offenses by adding Section 11-1-7J, nuisance party, and declaring an emergency. Grady, did you want to explain the emergency part?
Yes, so normally ordinances under state law have an effective date of 30 days afterwards. However, the council can go ahead and declare emergency and passes by emergency clause, which means it'd basically be in effect starting tomorrow if the council were to pass this tonight. Even if you had minor amendments, I believe that they could do that tonight, and it would be effective tomorrow. Again, we're getting concerned because we're in pool season now. We're going to probably start hearing more and more complaints about this type of issue. The other thing I just want to make clear, too, I think the town attorney did a great job of explaining that we cannot selectively enforce just with short-term rentals. And the way that this is going to work is that if there's a family having a barbecue or a swim party or some family function, they might get a warning, and then if they're just an occasional party and then 90 days clicks away, then they're not going to be subject to having any fines or whatever. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear, that this is really intended, while we have to equally apply this to everyone and all properties in town, the intended purpose of this is to go after the party nuisance homes. People that are occasional, have family gatherings or functions at their home. This is not going to probably affect them, and if they do get a warning, they probably won't get another one, for like another 90 days afterwards. So it's not going to be people that just have these occasional situations. It's really to go after the ones where we have constant problems.
Okay, council discussion, Councilman Magazine?
Yeah, you mentioned a penalty for the second offense. What is that penalty?
Mayor and members of the council, excuse me, let me pull it up here for a second. Yes, the second penalty is $500.
Okay. Yeah, because my concern when I listened to you was, let's suppose that somebody goes to Airbnb, rents for a long weekend. There's a violation, they're notified. I thought you were saying they don't pay a fine until the third one, but you could have 2 or 3 or 4 in one long weekend. So it's $500 for the second time.
Correct. And with the non-owner responsible party citations, actually, the first offense would be $250, then it graduates up to $500, and then to $1,000. And then there's a clause in there that if you have a multiple in excess of 3 within a certain time period, it can be double from there.
And Mitesh, I also believe the way it's written, too, is that both the renting party and the owner can also be kind of cited concurrently.
Correct.
Although it's intended to get at the source of the problem, they can both be, if it's an ongoing issue with a particular property, they can both get cited, correct?
Yes, that is correct. The person occupying the residence and having the party get cited, and then the notice of violation comes from the town to the property owner. The property owner gets a first notice of violation as a warning, and on subsequent notices of violation, a fine would attach as well.
Okay, and what happens after the $1,000 warning?
Let me pull
The
it.
$1,000, where does it go from there? Because I know sometimes if they're renting big houses and they're making a lot of money on it, $1,000 is nothing to them.
Well, after the $1,000, we also have the code's recidivism clause where we can actually provide it over to code enforcement and the magistrate to actually get a civil complaint being filed.
And what would happen then? I mean, just so everybody understands that it's not just pay the fine and then go on and do it again.
Well, that's one of the areas where, we had to balance between just the party homes and the residents. We didn't want to make this so burdensome that we're actually negatively impacting our residents that may get caught up in this as well. So really, it's just a fine sort of situation at this point in time.
And this would really be complaint-driven. So if you know your neighbor's having a graduation party and it's getting a little loud, nobody's going to shut the party down or do anything unless somebody calls and complains.
Mayor and members of the council, true, it's complaint-driven, but also there is a provision that if enforcement officers were to be in the area and they witnessed a violation of the law, underage drinking on the lawn, or over traffic filling the streets with people out there with drinks as well, then they could actually stop and use this section as well as to cite for a nuisance party.
Okay. Questions? Councilman DePorter?
So I love the idea of providing our citizens protection. Everything that's listed there is all illegal already, right? So minors consuming, fighting, littering, and what have you. So is really the goal here is to provide this fine structure to stop the owner of the home from renting to these kind of, because I've seen these Airbnbs where you can rent for a wedding, and it says, you must adhere to town noise ordinance. So I would imagine all this would end up being, you'd call the sheriff's department. There's more than 12 people, which is pretty common. I would imagine that's a pool party in this town with the amount of kids gathering. So that number is kind of low, but I get you have to put a number on something. And then you'd have the noise, a noise machine to see if it's meeting those standards. But unless any of those things are taking place, disturbing the peace, fighting, littering, it wouldn't be labeled a nuisance. It would be more a family party that needs to quiet down, potentially.
Mayor, members of the council, note there's a little caveat there. The items that are listed, minors in possession, minor in consumption, those items actually escalate the violation. That will serve to actually, instead of getting a first violation fine, you would get a second violation fine. So that's a escalation of a nuisance party. Here, disturbing the peace, and whereas it could be a noise complaint, it could be traffic, it could be any one of the things in the definition of a nuisance party, could come into a play for what is a nuisance party. So it doesn't have to be all of them. It doesn't have to be any one of them. Those are just a list of possible ways to disturb the peace.
You're absolutely right, though. We already have a noise ordinance that is already in effect. There's obviously laws against littering. There's laws against consumption of alcohol by minors. But we basically have a process here, though, and our intent here is to get the word out that this is not going to be tolerated, and so hopefully we can limit this kind of behavior from happening. The Airbnb and some of the other short-term rentals, as you mentioned, they do have strict guidelines as to what the properties can be rented for, and it's primarily just to be an alternative to a hotel or motel. But we're finding that in addition to Airbnb, people are doing postings in social media and Meetup and websites like that. And so all we're trying to do is try to get one easy tool that is out there, and we can try to get the word out and try to take better control of the situation. Right now, it's been kind of hit or miss on trying to get this under control, and our intent is trying to get this under control and have some civil penalties for a number of different issues. So I think that's what we're trying to do, is have a toolbox here that will be available to our sheriff's deputies.
You have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I do have a couple of comments and questions. In this, the way it's written right now, I have a little bit of a concern when it stipulates including property used to conduct business. While I understand that the purpose of this is for residential properties, it's not stipulated in here residential private property. It just says private property. So I'm concerned that this could open up a complaint on a business in town, and I would not want that to be something that was used in the wrong fashion of a complaint. Secondly, a couple of other points I want to ask you, your clarification. In Maricopa County, currently, it's a requirement, and it's a state statute, that residential property owners register their properties as either primary, secondary homes, or investment properties. I'd like to know, and I'd like your comment on whether these Airbnb short-term rentals, which is what this really was initiated because of this particular one property that was being rented on a short-term basis, is the owner required to register with Maricopa County that they're utilizing a residential property in Fountain Hills as an investment property? And if so, that property then, and income from those properties should be subject to our rental tax, and we should be collecting revenues on those business entities that are being used in town. How can we make sure that that's a requirement for residents that are using their homes in that fashion, so that we make sure we collect the proper revenues? Comment, please.
Yep. As to the first question about properties being used to conduct business, we drafted it broadly enough that we would bring up, private rental halls, other situations where a party is getting out of hand and impacting residential neighbors. Therefore, you could have, whether it's a dining establishment or just a private venue, that if the party is spilling out into the streets, the music is getting too loud, neighboring residences could call the sheriff's office to go pay a visit, and if they are within the bounds of this ordinance, receive a notice of violation.
Mayor, may I have a follow-up? I would recommend that we have some sort of carve-out for businesses that are intended to be businesses such as the Overtime, such as the Alamo, such as any of the civic organizations that have events in parking lots on Plot 208, and also a carve-out for this downtown district, because this downtown district is an area where I think we're going to find that there's going to be more and more outside events that are going to have more than 12 people, that are going to have noise, that would fall into this type of a complaint, which could cause us to stop those, which I don't think want to do.
Mayor?
Vice Mayor, did you have something first?
I do.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So I truly see the need for this, but I feel like we should keep an open mind, and if we're going to move this quickly on an ordinance that will, number one, be hard to enforce. It's difficult to have an officer go out and make a decision on whether the party's too loud or not. Oh my goodness, I'd have to have a second job, as a kid, if that was the case, the officers coming up and fining us. But I see this as a need, especially since we have, and I believe this is right, we've had one major problem on one street that has been very continual, and for 6 months. And so I clearly see the need for this, and I will support it. But I think we really need to keep an open mind on adjusting this as situations arise. And a perfect example would be, I've got a neighbor that I don't like, and they're having a little party with 13 people, and it's getting a little bit loud, but not really loud. But since I don't like them, I'm going to call them and turn them in. And so once again, it goes back to the discretion of the officer that's being released. And is it really out of hand, or is it really not out of hand? Is it really going to be a citation or not? And so that's why I'm saying I will support this, because I know there's a need for it. And I see the need, but I also think we need to, as a council, we need to keep an open mind on adjusting this ordinance so we can eliminate the misfires, if I may.
Grady, did you have an answer for that?
I do. In fact, my staff report, because I do feel like this is happening very quickly and the council didn't really have a lot of time to actually evaluate and study this issue. In my staff report, I'm recommending that we come back in December to evaluate the effectiveness of this and see what, if any, tweaks may need to be made to the ordinance. Because we're going to live and learn and see what works and what doesn't work. And so I think that's one of the things we want to definitely do. because I think that this is pretty quick, and normally we have a lot more time. I'm going back to the day when we did the noise ordinance, and it took a couple tries before we got that one right.
Yeah, I just have one question about venues. Some of these, like this particular house that we're talking about, has been advertising that people could rent it for their weddings. And we saw a video where they were actually rolling in banquet tables. So is any of this going to protect the neighborhoods from actually using a residential home as a venue?
Mayor, members of the council, no, this, because we are passing an ordinance, or it's a draft ordinance that is equally applicable to all private property, and if we revise, based off of Councilmember Tullis's opinion, just the residential properties, it's very important to stress that we are not targeting Airbnb rentals here or any other short-term rentals here. That would be pretextual, and we would not be able to do that under the Airbnb law. So, and that's why we had to draft this broad enough that it would strike the right balance between short-term rentals, long-term rentals, and just owned property with a long-term resident in there. So we couldn't, and this is not designed to just attack venues or residential property being used as a venue.
But I would like to comment on that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Because this has been problematic. We will, through our zoning, we have the ability to regulate that currently. And so, under our zoning, residential properties cannot be used as event venues. And so, this has gotten really murky with this particular location, and because they do the rentals that are legitimate and they're Airbnb and they're not causing any issues. And then sometimes the people that do rent it, even through Airbnb, are doing rehearsal dinners and weddings and all that, which is really not the intent. And so we need to go ahead and do some enforcement activities when they are in violation. And we need to be made aware, and the neighbors have been doing a pretty good job of keeping us informed about this situation when there's what appears to be weddings being held there or other types of events. So we really need to, but yet it gets very murky, because what will happen is people will rent it for Airbnb for the hotel side of things or as the inn side of things, and then they go ahead and have these events. And so I believe that some of these have been in violation of Airbnb, and I think we need to get in touch with Airbnb and let them know that a particular rental on such a date was in violation of their terms and conditions with the owner of the property.
Mm-hmm. And just in answer to Councilman Tullis's question about taxing Airbnb and the other short-term rental companies are now going to be collecting the tax and submitting it to DOR as per the new legislation, correct?
Mayor and members of the council, that is my understanding as well. I just would steer clear of bringing that into open discussion right now. That hasn't been agendized, and we are kind of going more off onto the Airbnb side of things rather than the general applicability of this ordinance.
Gotcha. Councilman Magazine?
Do we have the power to require that short-term rentals post the ordinance in a prominent place?
Once again, Mayor, members of the council, we are here not regulating short-term rentals, so I would, entertain that discussion when we agendize a discussion on short-term rentals.
Councilman DeBoer?
Mayor, if I may, I just wanted to take a minute to remind council, as it relates to businesses or the thought of a carve-out for business, we spent several months with Copperwind and that whole process in terms of refining and coming up with a new ordinance, a revised ordinance to address noise in general, whether it's residential or business. So we already have something like that in place that took us several months of vetting and putting together.
Anybody else? Can we bring the public in now? We have speaker cards.
Yes, Mayor. We have 6 speaking cards, and we have only one that was submitted who did not want to speak, but wanted you to know that they were for this, and that's Sherry James.
Okay.
So we'll start with Thorin Henning, followed by Pam Petrick, and then Lori Radovich.
Okay, just remind everybody to state your name and that you live in Fountain Hills. Don't give your address or anything like that.
My name's Lauren Henning. I live in Fountain Hills. When I tell anyone about the nightmare that is the house next door, the first question always is, how do they get away with it? How can someone be allowed to be such a nuisance to their neighbors and not be stopped? This ordinance being proposed is not designed to prevent the residents of Fountain Hills from having barbecues, parties, and celebrations. It is instead designed to offer a tool so that non-residents who come here simply to party do not affect the quality of life of those who actually live here. We bought a home in Fountain Hills for the peace and tranquility. Since January, that peace and tranquility is non-existent. Each weekend, the house next door has been rented by groups of 10 to 20 who come there solely for the purpose of partying. Shouldn't a person who's purchased a home and lives full-time in this community have the right to enjoy their property and not have to put up with groups of people who do not even live here and just pay their $50 a night to party, play loud music, and use X-rated language all weekend long, week after week? Would you want to live next to that? More importantly, would you buy a house next to that? If so, we have one to sell you. Not only do we have to put up with the short-term rental partiers, but the selfish owner who does not even live in the house hosts his own parties as well. These are not normal parties with a group of friends and family. Instead, he advertises all over the internet for people to come to the house, sometimes charging money. According to the website, 66 people attended his last party, lining the streets with cars. Sometimes my husband has to go out and direct traffic so I can park in front of the house to bring the groceries in. The last party was scheduled to last for 9 hours. 9 hours. And at hour 10, the neighbors had had enough and called the sheriff. In Fountain Hills, residents are limited to 4 garage sales a year. Why? To protect each neighborhood from annoyance, disruption, and traffic. The guidelines even remind people to be a good neighbor. This ordinance is no different. When you have people in short-term rentals who have no interest in being good neighbors, an ordinance needs to be in place to stop the abuse of the neighborhood. The current noise ordinances do not kick in until 10 o'clock at night. These parties typically start in the morning. That means we, as residents, are forced to deal with it for at least 13 hours. 4 separate sheriff officers have told us that the current ordinances have no teeth in them. They can stop the party for one night, but all that means is that the next weekend another group of partiers comes in and we start the whole thing over. That is why this ordinance is necessary, as it holds both the groups of partiers and the property owner responsible. The way this particular owner advertises on Airbnb, he encourages the partying behavior. We're not asking the council to stop the residents of Fountain Hills to enjoy celebrating weddings and graduations or stop having backyard barbecues. Instead, we're asking you to protect the quality of life of all residents.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Pam Petrick, Lori Radovich, and then John Radovich.
Mayor and Council, I'm Pam Petrick. I live in Fountain Hills for 17 years. I've been a landowner here though for 20. I ask you to pass this ordinance as a safety issue. The neighbors, they're very, very angry. You have no idea. You don't understand, I don't think. We have been bombarded week after week after week after week with the parties, and it's really broken our spirit. Ever since last Christmas, there have been parties when 12 to 100 people, and we aren't allowed to enjoy our homes the way we used to. I don't entertain anymore because I don't want to invite people over to have to see what's going on across the wash from me. We have to waste sheriff deputies' time and the town's resources to come and tell them to move their cars or turn the obscenities down, so at least we don't have to listen to that. These large parties have a lot of alcohol, and it only takes one person who's highly intoxicated to cause a problem. We've seen cars drive off the wash, into the wash, and we've seen fires being started in the desert, and that's when they weren't drunk. So we don't know what's going to happen, but this could affect the whole town if the wash caught on fire. And I fear for the safety of the deputies and our citizens, because you never know who's going to be there or what they might be doing inside or what they might be hiding. I beg you to stop this cancer in our neighborhood before it takes over. And thank you for listening. I hope you vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Lori Radovich, followed by John Radovich, and then Chris Gilbo.
Hi, my name's Lori Radovich. I'm a Fountain Hills resident of 39 years. Many neighbors have or will speak to the issues of noise and nuisance we have been subjected to by what we've referred to as the party house, among other descriptions. Aside from the music, lights, excess cars parked on streets, and so on, a major issue is that this owner is advertising this as a venue for weddings, showers, bachelor parties, and so forth. Fountain Hills already has existing zoning ordinances in place regarding the types of businesses that are permitted in various areas. In a residential area, the permissible businesses include typical home-based businesses such as graphic design, marketing, etc. This is being advertised and run as an event, venue, and hotel. We have rented commercial halls for parties and will require to obtain insurance coverage as well as a single-day liquor license, even though we were supplying, not selling alcohol. Commercial venues have occupancy restrictions, mandatory fire codes, health inspections, and so on. The owner is running this as a commercial venue while providing none of these things. Legitimate businesses have ordinances as far as noise, etc. They cannot have music past 10 o'clock unless they have a special use permit. My daughter's wedding was held at Eagle Mountain Golf Course. We were told from the outset that all music had to end by 10 p.m., even though it was held indoors, and the premises had to be vacated by 10:30. Running a residence as a commercial business is already covered by existing town ordinances. This presents a legitimate health and safety threat to not only those renting it, but also the surrounding neighborhood. Cars parked up and down our neighborhood streets could prevent fire or ambulance vehicles from accessing someone in need. We have called the sheriff's department and have asked, what would you like us to do? They state they are frustrated by the lack of clear, enforceable policies to deal with this issue. Hopefully, an ordinance that gives the sheriff's officer some real means to deal with this issue will be passed by the town council and enacted immediately. If not, this same scenario can be replicated in one quiet neighborhood throughout our previously quiet, peaceful town. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Next.
John Radovich, followed by Chris Gilbo, and then Bob Henning.
Good evening. John Radovich, live on Ocotillo Drive. And I have 3 minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay, I raised to have one. My concern here, mainly as a business owner myself, is because of where we're at in this day and age, people are trying anything to do a different wrinkle, if you will, on common business practices. And this clearly, to me, is a person that is running a commercial business out of a residence. And my concern for this town is this catches on, and this is going to take off like wildfire, because they know that Eagle Mountain must pay taxes, licenses, and all other things, adequate parking, the whole litany of things that you need to run a business and pay all the licenses to do that, and these people do not do that. And it is clear to me the noise is a byproduct of what's going on here. The noise is the result. They could be doing something, it could be heavy industry. I don't know, but it's still taking up the streets, it's taking up the physical area, plus causing problems. And that's where I really see the issue. And this could take off. If one is doing well, somebody's going to imitate, just like anything else in business. So that's my point here. And the City of Scottsdale does not allow private residents to have banquet halls or restaurants or anything. It's right on their website. And I would suggest that we adopt something like that on the Fountain Hills website too, if this comes through. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chris Gilbo, and then Bob Henning.
Hi, Chris.
I'm Chris Gilbo, and I can't believe I'm standing here. I love my street, I love my town, I love my neighborhood, and I can't believe that I woke up one day and it was gone. And you've heard a lot about quality of life, and I'm going to tell you personally, what does it mean? Quality of life is when you go out in your front driveway and you look at the mountains, you see the Superstition, you see Red Mountain, and you take a deep breath and you say to yourself, I'm insignificant, my problems are minor. This is a, big, beautiful world. And my quality of life has been disrupted. We have parties going on kitty corner, straight across. just a little bit kitty corner from this house, the party house. And this isn't a man who is doing an Airbnb. He's running a business. He charges $750 a night to do an event at this house. It's a beautiful big house with a, huge pool. I mean, it's a beautiful home, and it's empty. He doesn't live there. I don't know who he is, but he advertises on Airbnb that he is one of the few Airbnb houses that will allow parties, events, special things like weddings. The first time I realized there was something wrong was when he had a holiday party there. And there were cars all the way up and down the block in both directions on my street. And I stopped some people walking by the house and I said, where are you going? What are you doing over there? They said, we're going to a party. And I said, a party? Do you know the people? And this very nice couple said, oh, no, we don't know them, but we're paying $5 a piece to go to this party. And I said, are you from Fountain Hills? No. They were flashing blue lights, and I'm sure you'll hear from Bob about the noise and what was going on at the pool. This is not a typical Airbnb, okay? This man, he knows what he's doing. So quality of life is gone in our street, and we live on a beautiful street. And I hope it doesn't happen to y'all, because when I've been looking at Airbnbs in other towns and other cities, they are in historic areas, downtown Charleston. They are going in everywhere. There are people buying properties specifically and turning them into Airbnbs because they can get away with it. No taxes to the city, the towns. So we need to please pass something now that will help us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bob Henning.
He's actually charging him $1,000.
I want to thank the leadership, the mayor, city manager, town council, and others for finally trying to do something about the awful reality that I, my wife, and other neighbors face virtually every weekend. Leadership is really not about a position or a title, it's about action, characterized by doing the right thing when necessary. You can't run from reality. Fountain Hills is changing, we know that. Just look at some of the events that have happened in this town in the last few months. Action or inaction are both forms of leadership. Unfortunately, one of the key groups in our town, the MPOA, chose to do nothing last Wednesday, not even to move the file for the consideration by an attorney. 9 neighbors have filed complaints, 9. There's Bob, who lives across the wash from the party house, where one weekend there was a group of 10 to 15 guys playing loud, obscene music and playing drinking games, yelling out obscenities. When he signaled to them to hold it down, they collectively gave him the finger. Hopefully you looked at the videos. There was a bachelorette party being very loud and screaming obscenities. A full-scale wedding with over 50 guests, complete with DJ and strobe lights flashing into every neighbor's house. You also got to hear the X-rated version of Marco Polo, where the words penis and vagina are being shouted out over and over across the wash. Twice in this 2 months' time, the smell of sewage was in the air and the sound of truck pumping it because this residential house is not equipped to be run like a hotel. Hopefully you've seen the pictures of the aftermath, beer cans, broken beer bottles, empty containers that are being blown out of overstuffed garbage cans, pictures of the debris in the wash, a floaty, a balloon, a discarded umbrella. This gets played out every weekend. The reason it's happening is very clear. This town has nothing in place to prevent it. Unlike towns such as Flagstaff, Mesa, Tempe, and my favorite one, Tucson, it starts over every weekend. That's the second point. 4 weeks in a row, the police were called. But what happens? A police report is filed. When I asked the officer why not a citation, he said, would it be fair for a group that just rented a place to not have a warning? How would they know? That is why the other towns have placed the provisions we are trying to pass. The only difference that I see is that I like the idea of 5 people. It is there for a reason. It's easy to recognize. Counting to make sure there is 10 or 12 seems to be a waste of time. When the officer responded to our call about the adult Marco Polo game, he asked, how many people are there? I responded, I don't know. It's dark, maybe 8 or 9. But come down to my pool so you can hear what they're yelling. Changes like you are about to decide are always going to have objections, short-sightedness. You hear some of it in the room. You mean I can't have a barbecue with 10 people? But if you read the ordinance carefully, it is designed to protect residents from the abuses like the one we live next door to. Finally, from your own Town of Fountain Hills website, the beauty, tranquility, and safety of the town of Fountain Hills makes it one of the most desirable places to live in the United States. The town is actively involved in maintaining an excellent quality of life. Please get active. and pass this ordinance so that the quality of life can be returned to our neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, I just want to comment on something that, that Chris said. I've talked to other mayors in the East Valley, and actually, so many meetings I've had all over the valley with other mayors. This is in every single city. It doesn't matter how small they are, this is in every single city. And there are investors who have their eye on Scottsdale and Fountain Hills and other areas that they are thinking about buying a lot of homes and using them for these short-term rentals because they can get a lot of money for them, so it's worth it for them to invest in them. We've gotten calls from people who said, you know, I'd like to buy 3 properties in Fountain Hills. What are your rules against this kind of investment? So at the time, we didn't really have anything except what we have. That's how this all came about. Unfortunately, we can only go so far with what the town can do. I know that there are HOAs, like in Sunridge, that they have passed ordinances that can go further. Any legislation that's passed, HOAs are exempt from following those regulations. So, you know, if you ever thought you hated your HOA, now's the time to love them, because they can stop this on their own. But the parts of town that aren't covered by HOAs, that's what we're trying to help right now, to give them some relief. So while there might be one house, this is a typical example of the future here. This is what we're going to face, because Tempe had a lot of these homes, and they passed an ordinance. Flagstaff had a lot. Sedona, they don't know what they're going to do in Sedona, because there are areas where they almost don't have any more neighborhoods, because all the houses are rentals. So we have to think about that. We can't just think about that it's one house and that this is some aberration, that it's one house. No, it's one house that's going to lead to more houses here. And quality of life is what it's all about. We have to decide what we want for quality of life. Now, you know, in neighborhoods that have HOAs can decide what they want to do. They have total control if they want to have them or not have them. They want to have some restrictions or not totally ban them. They can do whatever they want. And that's what we would like to do in our town, but because of legislation that was passed, and I'm proud of Senator Kavanaugh for standing up against everybody else who voted for it and voted against it. That was probably because he was on town council here, and he understands what something like this can do to a town and do to a neighborhood. And he wouldn't like something like that living next to him, living next door to him. So we've worked a long time putting this together. I really want to thank Mitesh, because he really rushed this through. The staff rushed this through to get this ready before the summer, because we feel that the summer is going to see a lot of these events at this house and maybe some of the other houses. There are 2 other houses in town that are owned by Golf Sioux, and they could suddenly become party houses like this. So I do want to thank them for working so hard to get this ready for our last council meeting before the summer. So with that, I will ask the council if they have any further discussion on this or questions. If,
I have a comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess after hearing more from the neighbors and certainly reading your emails, it's so surprising to think that they went through 6 months of fighting excessive noise and what have you without, there's nothing that we had that had enough teeth to contact the owner until this. So I thank you for getting to it. And I get it resets every time a new party group comes in. I'm wondering if anyone thinks the number 10 is fine with me, but it seems kind of arbitrary, to be quite honest. Could it be like any number? Oh, 12.
It's 12.
I don't know, if there needs to be a number, I think that's great. But to me, a nuisance party is like any number of people doing any of that crazy-ass stuff listed after it. Drinking in public, littering, and so forth.
The council could determine what that number is. The reason why we chose that number is 12 is not an unreasonable number for a typical family function or people inviting friends over. It could be whatever number the council wishes. We thought 5 was a very low number. based on that this isn't a university kind of situation or a college town. And so we increased the number to be a little bit more reasonable, but whatever the council decides, you can make that decision tonight as part of your motion.
I guess what I'm going to agree with Councilman DePorter. I guess even 5 people who are renting a house can cause a disruption in a neighborhood. So I think, aside from not putting the number in, it could be anybody who's any amount that's having a party. That's anybody who, even if you have 5 people, they could have amplified music. So if that would be agreeable, I'd rather take the number out.
Mayor and members of the council, yes, we can take the number out and just define a nuisance party as a disturbance of the peace with all the crazy things, as Councilmember DePorter said.
Okay. Okay. Councilman Magazine.
Yeah, I favor that as well, but I suspect that the reason it was set so high is that people could have a barbecue with 5 people, and if your neighbor doesn't like you, they're going to complain, and so the police could be inundated with phone calls. However, I think it's probably worth taking a chance, because 12 seems awfully high to me, too.
Yeah, I mean, my kids on the trampoline could bug the neighborhood enough to qualify for one of those, so. Just especially if it's something we can review again in December, how it's going.
Okay, and Councilman Tolis, you talked about the business community.
I just thought it should say residential property, private property, including, could be a business downtown. I think the intent is there. I think I like what Grady had indicated, that we pass this and we look at it in 6 months, and if there's abuses to this ordinance, then we address it at that time.
If I could just jump into Councilmember Tolis's point too, just to let you know too, our current noise ordinance, our entertainment district pretty much exempts that out. So if I'm understanding that correct, Bob. So basically the noise levels that the council adopted 18 months ago, our entertainment district, which is downtown, basically is exempt from that current noise ordinance.
So that supersedes this?
Yes.
Okay, then it takes care of that.
Just on the noise level, though.
Just on the noise.
Well, to that point, could you conceivably, not to draw it out, but could you conceivably have someone do an Airbnb in Park Place? Wouldn't you want them subject to noise ordinance as well?
Yeah, we're hoping that, we don't have these issues downtown either, but I think that, that in a rental kind of situation with apartments, that the property management folks will take very active control of that.
Okay, any other council discussion? Anything from
Mayor,
Councilman Leger?
Mayor,
Oh,
Thank you, Mayor. I was thinking 12 was an awfully high number, and actually thinking of lowering that, but after listening to Councilman DePorter, I would agree. Taking the number out makes a tremendous amount of sense. I mean, you could have 2 people create chaos, similar to some of the emails we've received. So I would certainly be on board if we can define and implement this without a set number on it. Thank you.
okay, any other comments, questions, concerns? If not, would anyone like to make a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve the suggested motion, Resolution 2018-46, and adopt ordinance 1809 with the exception of deleting the number of people from 12 to 1 or more.
Second.
Okay, the motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Mayor, 6-0.
Okay. All right, thank you all for coming. And once again, this is done on an emergency basis, so it goes into effect tomorrow. We'll be ready for next weekend. Okay. So you're welcome to stay. If you want to go party, you can go do that. You got till 10 o'clock. And we're going to return to item number 4. Remember, we still have the rest of the agenda. One staff report. I'm going to open the public hearing to receive comments on a proposed special use permit to allow Verizon Wireless to install a cellular antenna with associated roof-mounted equipment to be 2 feet and 4 inches above the maximum allowed height of 54 feet at 16845 East Avenue, The Fountains, Park Place, case number SU 2018-01. Marissa?
Good evening, Mayor,
Okay,
Vice
you're
Mayor,
up.
Council. Again, this is for a special use permit 2018-01 to put wireless facilities on top of Building D of Park Place, which is not the one closest to Town Hall, it's the next one east. They're requesting to put 3 wireless facilities on the roof. 2 are under the maximum building height of 54 feet, but the third one is above that maximum 54 feet, and it exceeds it by 3 feet, 11 inches. In addition, they are located on top of a residential structure in a residentially zoned district. So there are 2 criteria that would require a special use permit for wireless facilities to be located, A, in a residentially zoned district, and/or B, if they exceed the maximum building height. So they've definitely met that first criteria. The second criteria, one of them meets that. Here's a location map. I think we're all kind of aware where this is located. So there are 3 alpha, beta, gamma sectors. This is alpha sector. It is located in the northwest corner. This is Fountain Hills Boulevard, and it's located in the northwest corner of the building. This is looking from Rio Verde. About it. And here's what the applicant has shown us on what it would potentially look like. So here's before, and then there's the after with the facility on top of the roof of the structure. Again, beta sector, it's in this southwest corner of the building. Here's their rendering of what that would look like. And they did mention during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that they will be set back. They won't be flush with the exterior wall of the building. So they would, that's what you're seeing here, is it's set back. If it was flush with the front exterior of the building, it would look a little bit higher. And then gamma sector. I want to go back really quick 1 second. This one's the beta sector, which is on the southwest corner of the property, is the one that exceeds the building height by 3 feet 11 inches. And then gamma sector is on the northeast corner of the property. It's kind of hard to see it, but it's that little structure right there. There was a question by Planning and Zoning Commissioner Dabrowski, the chair, on whether or not these could be seen from the south. And these are taken from the south. You can see the roof of the building. This is not to scale. It was just an example of what it can look like, that you can see them. And one of the reasons why this was important was that staff is recommending that they be enclosed on all 4 sides, so that even though you can't see it from the ground level, you can see it from the elevations further up, and it would be more aesthetically appealing than just seeing the exposed wireless structures. We kind of address this. It is located near, on top of, and adjacent to other residential facilities in the area. Part of the reason that they need this located specifically where it is, per the applicant, is the terrain and the buildings. What happens when you're located in a downtown area is you get some areas where you can't get signal because of the building structures, so having it located on the roof would facilitate with that. And then there are trees along Avenue of the Fountains, of course. They'll be using color and material that matches the existing building. And again, screened on all four sides. That's consistent with Chapter 19 of the zoning ordinance as it relates to screening of utilities. They'd be accessing it from the roof. They've stated there are no other suitable existing towers to cover the downtown area with cellular coverage. One of the requirements in the zoning ordinance for cellular structures is that the equipment be located on the ground. Because of the separation between the facilities on the roof and the ground, they're requesting that they be allowed to locate the facilities on the roof. They would still be underneath that 120 square foot and 8 feet in height requirement. At Planning and Zoning Commission, they recommended that Town Council approve this request in 7-0, and staff also recommends approval with the stipulation that they be closed on all three sides, or all four sides, and I believe that the applicant has agreed that that's an okay request.
Okay. Any questions for Marissa? Yes, Councilman Magazine.
One question. Marissa, any indication that any other companies are going to come forward and ask for the same thing?
I do not have any indication of that. I would like to interject one thing. I have had one citizen contact me in support of this project. I've had several that have contacted me via telephone against the project, but I don't have anything in writing, but I did want to communicate that on their behalf. So no, and to answer your question again, no, I haven't heard from any other.
Did those folks indicate what their opposition was, what it was based on?
They don't like how it looks. They don't like that it exceeds the building height. They're concerned about the safety of the structure. A couple have mentioned radio waves and studies being done on that and if they're viable or not. And yeah, those were the primary reasons.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Marissa, when the Wi-Fi goes away, which one of these days it will, like everything else that's in the world of communication, will be changed, will they take these off the top of the buildings?
So there is a differentiation, and the applicant can give you much more expert opinion on this, but the Wi-Fi is not the same as this wireless structure. The Wi-Fi would be connected straight to like Cox cable, for an example, create a hotspot, and then there'd be repeaters that would be located along the public right-of-way. That's how Wi-Fi would be provided. This is wireless, so cellular, and there's a difference between the two. And I'm not an expert.
Well, you're doing pretty good. So, in other words, these are just cellular towers.
Correct.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here? Or a representative?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor Kavanaugh, Vice Mayor Brown, members of the council. Let me get this up here a little bit, I'm sorry. My name is Darren Snodgrass. I am the director for the Southwest region for Velocitel. We represent Verizon Wireless. I want to thank you for allowing us to speak here this evening and kind of give you some information on what the project entails and kind of how we got to this point. The proposal you have before you today is a wireless communication facility located at that building that we've been talking about on 16845 East Avenue of the Fountains. The carrier of this facility is going to be Verizon Wireless, and they desire to work closely with your municipality and be a good neighbor. So therefore, they are proposing this structure to be camouflaged and agreeing with and stipulating with, as the staff has asked for, on all four sides. The side that will be accessed will be a gated side that will basically just kind of swing open, either by gate or one single. We'll have to take a look at the design itself. But all the equipment will be behind the camouflage section. So even the radio equipment that typically is on the ground on a normal tower situation will be housed behind the camouflaged screening, so it will not be seen. Now, an area of this type is initially identified as an area of concern by getting subscriber comments and feedback, and verified by the use of a radio frequency modulation software. It was determined, therefore, there was a significant drop in coverage and capacity of voice and data capabilities in this area. And from the data, a search area was proposed and criteria was developed. Wireless communication facility at this subject property will service the surrounding areas and will fill in those gaps in coverage and capacity. The facility will augment wireless voice, data, and internet-related services to the Fountain Hills community, further enhancing the attractiveness of Fountain Hills to future residents, business consumers, visitors, and tourists. Within the last 4 years, the FCC has determined that we have hit heretofore an unimaginable mark. 51% of all American households are completely and totally wireless. The Chamber of Commerce studies identify telecommunications infrastructure as one of the key criteria for both commercial and residential developers. They look at that when they're targeting a planned growth and development. And the reasoning behind telecommunications as a key indicator is varied and sometimes taken for granted in our modern world, but first and foremost, it provides communications all in many different forms. You know, it's hard for me to sometimes conceptualize, but I'm actually entering my 25th year in this business. They told us we'd have a good 5.5-year career when I started this 25 years ago. We had no concept of what we would be seeing. We had no idea at that point in time that you'd be watching ESPN, Netflix, from not only your handheld, but we're also starting to see Dick Tracy phones, where they've got the thing on your watch. So when you start talking about making an area attractive to new residents, potential consumers, wireless infrastructure is one of the key components to making a community very attractive for investment. This facility will provide a number of benefits for Fountain Hills community that, again, are often taken for granted because we're just so used to it in this modern age. The facility will provide enhanced voice and data services. It'll provide enhanced E911 services. It'll provide enhanced mobile streaming capabilities. That's what we're talking about with doing Netflix or ESPN or CNN or whatever it may be. Also, location services using GPS for mapping software. And it augment capacity to help prevent dropped calls and system busy signals, which is what's being seen as of right now. Now, the need for the conditional use permit, as stated, are two separate points within the ordinance. Well, number one is that this is criteria, it needs to be a conditional use permit because the property is currently zoned as a TCCP, which is a mixed use, but is primarily residential, and therefore classified as a residential use, although it's mixed use. The other one is that the site itself exceeds the building height by 3 feet 11 inches. I think we've seen a couple different totals, but about 3 feet 11 inches. Now, one of the things we did to try to mitigate that, was we changed the antennas that were on that beta sector from 8-foot antennas to 6-foot antennas, so we dropped it down an additional 2 feet to try to mitigate that as much as possible. When you look at it visually, though, you will see no difference from the alpha sector, the gamma sector, or the beta sector. And the reason is, it is where the baseline is taken for the measurement itself, which is on the sidewalk area outside the building, which there are different levels of the sidewalk that create kind of a downward walk on one side, which is the side that has the beta sector. Again, we did design it to blend in as much as possible with camouflage screening that the antennas can broadcast through. To kind of answer some of the questions, yes, we are going to agree to all 4 sides. It will be accessed from the roof itself. The equipment will be enclosed behind a buffered and enclosed material that will mitigate any type of sound, although it's electronic equipment. With electronic, there's no generators. It really doesn't create any kind of sound that you have to worry about. In regards to the existing structures of height that could or potentially have been used, when we're given a search ring, we go through a number of different steps to try to find the properties that we want to take a look at. One of them is we do desktop surveys where we will check the FCC database, we'll check the FAA database. We have our own database of existing towers and structures. We cross-check those onto a mapping program to see if they do match, and if they don't, then we go out and we do a physical survey of the area to see if there's anything of height that we can use. In this particular case, there is none. Let's see, the other concern would be, okay, one of the other concerns that someone brought up on the last hearing that we had, and also some other questions, is the question of would small cells handle this versus a macro cell? My industry has not done a real good job at educating yet in terms of how small cells work, okay? All small cells require the macro cell. It has to go back. Think of it this way, the macro cell provides the overall umbrella for the entire area. The small cells augment and offload various different sectors on that macro cell. The issue we have here is both capacity and coverage. In many places, you'll find that the issue is capacity only. There's coverage there. It just can't handle the volume. I'm not going to say that that's not going to happen here either. Once the cell site is put in and you have the coverage and you have the ability to get the coverage, people are going to use it. And there's very likely going to be, at some point in time, someone coming here and talking to you about small cells, or DAS, which is a distributive antenna system. But they have to have the macro cell. They have to have the umbrella in order to work. They only offload what's called one carrier, and that doesn't mean the telephone carrier. It's a frequency. They offload one frequency, typically by itself, and so you need multiple of those to be able to handle the capacity. The vast majority of kids nowadays, and my daughter's one of them, she just graduated college a year or so ago, year before last, and is getting married this fall. She does not know life without cell phones. I was in the business 2 years before she was born. Okay? That's who you're trying to attract. That's who you're looking at. Those are the members. They're now out of college. They're now getting jobs. They're now getting married. They're now buying homes. And they live on these things. So the macro cell is there to provide the overall umbrella. The micro cells, the small cells, the distributive antenna systems are there to help augment that so that you have the ability to upload multiple uses of data. I guess in summary, we've demonstrated the need for the facility within the town of Fountain Hills, and this subject property actually ideally provides the best location that would qualify for this macro cell. And we respectfully ask your approval so that we may move forward with this project, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
So, several months ago, we approved the cells that set up on top of light poles. Is that a microcell?
Those are probably small cells, okay? What you'll have, is the nomenclature gets crazy, okay? You'll hear some people talk about DAS being outside versus inside. A distributive antenna system typically in the past has always been for in-building coverage. Chase Field has them, okay? And they can handle more than one carrier, being Verizon, AT&T, or Sprint. The small cell is typically on the outside, and those are the ones that we're starting to see now, putting those on top of light poles, attaching them to power poles. They may have a small cabinet that's attached to the pole itself, or maybe a 3 or 4 foot tall pedestal cabinet down at the base. That's the small cell. And then when you hear people call about microcells, those are typically, depending on how people are using the verbiage, are small macro cells. Okay, they have more than one antenna. They have more than one carrier within the antenna. So, and all these have to work together, and they are utilized for different reasons. But that's probably what you're looking at as a small cell.
The reason I asked the question is, I'm certainly not educated well enough to know if we're overdoing, if we're crossing over, do we need it all? So that's, your explanation is excellent. But I just want to make sure that if we're going to approve a macro cell, that we are also approving the smaller cells so we can utilize the macro cell to the greatest extent.
Well, I think that was covered probably more under the state regulation that was passed, state legislation was passed for the small cells. Let me answer your question in that, you know, are you overdoing it? We're in business to make money. We won't be putting cell sites in places where we're not going to make money, okay? I mean, I don't want to get crass about that, but, you know, T-Mobile, Verizon, Sprint, none of them are non-for-profit organizations. Sometimes I feel like I am as a consultant, but no. There's a substantial investment that goes into a macro cell and even the micro cells and the small cells. So they will not be just putting those everywhere just to put them there or on the hope that they will come. What they're doing is they're getting complaints. They're getting subscriber issues, or they're finding that they're not getting enough subscribers in a certain area, and therefore they look for adding the coverage. So in answer to your question, as long as we can provide to you, which we have on this particular one, you know, propagation maps and everything that shows, yes, it's required. It's required.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilman DePorter.
Do you know if the applicant, or if there's room on this macro site that you're intending to build on for other carriers? So what happens when AT&T wants to set up the same kind of macro sites? And quite frankly, that's our highest buildings downtown.
Right.
They're going to be for quite some time, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So what happens then? Is there room in that corner of the building where they can add behind your screens, or are we looking at more of those little pop-ups?
They would need to have their own separate area with their own separate screening. And the reason is we're not making ours big enough to accommodate, because you have to have approximately 10 foot of separation so that there's no interference. But, I mean, they would be subject to the same regulations, the same everything as we are, obviously. But in essence, no, this is not like a monopine where you have multiple levels that you can put, you know, carriers on. This would require their own systems. Yeah.
My only final thoughts is, you know, I'm not, we went through quite a bit of contention around the building height, as you can imagine, when the building came online, so.
I've heard.
Right. So 3'11" or even 11 inches would be, you know, a point of contention no matter what. So going over that is tough. But to your point, connectivity is key, and absolutely staying up to that is very important. So maybe we could also look at the roof of Town Hall, because we need to make some money to rent out some space. But
I'll pass that along.
Yeah, check it out. Check it out on the way out.
It's 10 feet away. Councilman Magazine.
Did I understand you to say that if Park Place didn't exist, based upon your survey, there's no place in Fountain Hills you could have put these antennas?
If Park Place didn't exist, there would be potentially, and I mean, even the town hall might be one that would be looked at. Would it provide the optimal engineering? No. And it was, if I remember right, I've been told that this site actually started before I came into the market, which was last year. It had been looked at one point in time. So, answer to your question, is there absolutely nothing? If it was never here, we'd have to find something to make it work. I mean, because there is a situation where we do have to provide the coverage. We do have a requirement with our subscribers. Is it optimal? No. This is optimal.
Let's look ahead 10 years.
I'll try.
Let's assume that we have growth within Fountain Hills, but also, in addition, the state trust lands get developed. And we have an additional 1,400 homes that are pretty far out. How are they affected?
Well, and more than likely, what you're going to end up having, again, is another one of these systems, for lack of a better term. We would, or I'm saying we, the telecommunications industry would have to locate more structures or more antennas. Now, part of those could also be utilized through the small cell. Part of those could be utilized through mini cells, little microcells. I mean, you might see them pop up in cactus. I mean, there's a cactus design that has antennas put into it. Okay, so you would still, let's say we're just.
Those aren't very high.
No, they're not. They're 40, I think the maximum they can go is 42 or 43 feet. So let's just say that there is an island of development out there that has no connectivity. Well, they will want connectivity, and we will need to find ways to do that. Now, there's a lot of different ways that we do that, you know, even in residential communities where we can put it at a church with a clock tower or put it in a monopine or something. But, you know, you're still going to, I'm just guessing, we're all playing hypothetical here, but you're probably going to need a macro cell of some type. And then the corresponding microcells. Now, we weren't even talking about 5G 10 years ago. So who knows what we'll be talking about in 10 years from now. The one thing that does not change is physics. And bandwidth is bandwidth, which is why they're buying, I say the carriers are buying some of the old UHF frequencies. And that's the L600, 600 megahertz you're going to hear about. It's just the kids, and I'm talking about my daughter and some of the others, it's a generation, I like to say it's a generation that has the greatest capacity to communicate and the worst ability. Okay? They text, they Instagram, they don't even Facebook. Facebook's for us old farts. That's right. But, you know, and it's all data. And data takes up more space. Voice is not as much as it used to be.
And of course, if you look back 10 years at technology,
yeah,
it was a little different. So,
yeah.
So 10 years is a lifetime in technology. So I guess there's just no way to know.
There really isn't. One thing, you know, I always heard, always had to argue against were satellites, and it's the sheer volume again. It's the sheer volume of data that has to be utilized that makes a lot of that stuff very impractical, which is why we're getting it close to the ground.
Well, I feel very fortunate that I attended the P&Z meeting, and I heard this once, and now I hear it twice, and now I really got it, the second time.
I didn't change anything, did I?
You talk about your daughter who just graduated. My 11-year-old grandson can't live without his phone, his iPad, and he doesn't even like my laptop because he can't hit the screen, because he has to use the keys. He doesn't like keys. So, yeah, we're trying to attract young families. We're hoping that they'll choose Fountain Hills. We have a lot of fairs on the street where all of the vendors are looking for Wi-Fi to use while they're, you know, while they're there. I know we've got a lot of blind spots over at Gunsight, at the condos there, and in the town center. We hear a lot about that. The businesses across the street, and it's going to be great to have that right on our new linear park that goes right down the middle. People can sit out there and do business outside, use their laptop, do whatever they want to do there. So it's certainly going to serve a lot of people. So I think it's a necessary part. Going ahead with technology is something that you can't do without anymore. So with that, do we have any speaker cards?
Yes, Mayor, we have one card. Philip Blackerby.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Philip Blackerby, resident of Fountain Hills, representing the Fountain Hills Design Center, located in beautiful downtown Fountain Hills, right on the Avenue of the Fountains. And before I start, I really want to offer my own personal congratulations and thanks to Bev Bender. She was very helpful to us when I was working with the council on the 2003-2004 period to develop the town strategic plan at that time, and on several issues since then. So thank you, Bev, and congratulations on your retirement. So when they started building the Park Place across the street, and by the way, I supported the development of that building, though I sure wish they'd changed their paint job. But you know, as soon as those concrete pillars got poured, actually, when they even started wiring up the steel for those concrete pillars, suddenly the cell phone service in our store sucked. Just no other word for it. A lot of breakups, a lot of drop calls, lots of just terrible phone service. And I've been with Verizon since 2001, and you know, I wouldn't go to any other carrier because of their extraordinary coverage and great service. But suddenly our service really sucked. And so we were hoping that something would come about as after this occurred. And so we're very much looking forward to having much better coverage, much better service for our cell phones. You know, I can't really, from my desk, I can't do telephone conferences at all. I have to go outside, really, to get any kind of phone service. And it is a real problem. You know, we do use lots of all kinds of communications. We text and we use all the social media and we work with our clients. But a lot of business occurs by telephone. And for us, it's our cell phones. Yeah, we have a landline, but hardly ever use it because it's all cell phone based. That's the number that our clients have. That's the number that our suppliers have. That's the number that they want to call and reach us on so that they can get us wherever we are. And the only place I got a problem talking to people is at my desk. So I urge you to support this application. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is that it? Okay. If there's no more council discussion, I'm going to close the public hearing. Consideration of proposed special use permit as just presented. Any further council discussion? If not, I'm looking for a motion. Okay, I've got a motion to approve.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Mayor 6-0.
Okay. Thank you, Darren. For items 6 and 7, there'll be one staff report. We'll start off with the public hearing. I've opened the public hearing. Marissa, you're up again. Public hearing to receive comments on ordinance 18-07, an amendment to the Town of Fountain Hills zoning ordinance and zoning map to change the zoning on .36 areas located in 11639 North Saguaro Boulevard, a.k.a. APN number 176-08-448, from C1 Neighborhood Commercial and Professional Zoning District to C3 General Commercial Zoning District to allow the construction of auto sales, service, and detail business, case number Z 2018-02. Marissa.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. This request is to rezone a property located at the corner of Saguaro and Desert Vista right-of-way to construct a car sales lot and a 4,300 square foot building space for auto sales, auto servicing, and auto detailing for the inventory on this parcel, as well as the inventory on their existing business. The existing business is located at the corner of North Saguaro and East Colony Drive. I did have a question at the P&Z meeting regarding the size of this property as it compares to their existing parcel. I went on the assessor's website, and the existing parcel is 18,000 square feet approximately. This subject parcel with this application is a little more than 15,500 square feet. So this parcel is slightly smaller than their existing business. The reason for this request is because auto sales, service, and detailing would not be allowed by right in the C1 zoning district. It is allowed by right in the C3 zoning district. The subject property is highlighted, outlined in turquoise right here. This is Desert Vista Park. This is Saguaro Boulevard. This is Desert Vista right-of-way. So I did a little graphic here to explain what the adjacent uses are. So the subject parcel is currently zoned C1. Auto part sales are located to the, kind of the northwest. There are some storage facilities in the area. And then there are residential. Residential to the north, there's a wash. It's kind of to the northeast. Across Saguaro Boulevard, there are residential, and then immediately adjacent to the east is a condo development. Immediately adjacent to this property, well, across an alley, is Professional. There is a veterinary clinic, and then Pal's Spa and Animal Care. And then, of course, the subject property is across the street from Desert Vista Park.
The property that's across the street, that's the closed gas station, what's that being used for?
This is auto sales and service.
Auto sales there?
Oh, wait, no, I apologize, auto
Oh.
service, auto service.
Auto service?
Right.
Like repairs?
Correct.
Okay.
This is concept plan. I apologize, it's a little difficult to see in the slide up here, but it shows the parcel with the proposed facility up here with the office and servicing and detailing up here, and then this would be open for parking of the cars that would be for sale, the auto sales area. There's the auto sales area. There is the proposed structure. I made an error in your staff report. I meant to include this table instead of a repeat of the adjacent uses table. I wanted to point out the differences in the C1 versus the C3. So pretty consistently, you can see the C1 has a greater setback and a lower building height, whereas C3, the setbacks are smaller and the building can go higher. This is called land use intensity, means that more of the lot can be covered. And typically also with more intense land uses are more harder uses. So you go from a retail or professional business, which would be in the C1, typical of C1, to more manufacturing, auto sales, servicing type businesses in the C3. I have two conceptual renderings here that were provided with the application. I do want to point out that while this rendering, I don't know exactly how tall this building is in the rendering, but they can go up to 40 feet in the C3 zoning district.
So let me just ask again, the park is behind the building?
Park is behind this, correct?
Behind the building?
Right. There's an alley between this building and the park as well.
Right.
Did an analysis, found that this is generally consistent with the general plan in some ways. It is infill development. We do encourage commercial development on Saguaro Boulevard, and it is pretty in line with a small town scaled business. It's not a giant car sales lot. However, there are some inconsistencies. There should be significantly more buffering for these types of intense uses, especially when they're adjacent to more residential and low-intensity uses, such as a park. And the general plan, one of the objectives is to protect and preserve existing neighborhoods from incompatible adjacent land uses. There's a little bit of this is a little unusual situation because you have storage and auto part sales and these things immediately adjacent to the park, but then there's also this mix of residential, so determining what the characteristic of that neighborhood was kind of difficult, but if you look at what the big elephant in the room is, it's that park. The park is a big component of that neighborhood, and so therefore, when reviewing the general plan, safety was brought up, and in staff's opinion, safety overrides any business development. Having a more intense land use in that proximity to the park is why staff is actually recommending denial of this request.
Would you repeat that? Sorry. Just repeat what you just said about denial.
The reason why I'm recommending denial, why staff is recommending denial, is because this intense land use in that proximity to the town park potentially creates some safety issues, and it's our opinion that the safety trumps business development.
What safety problems did you see?
So, let me go back a little bit.
Are all the, any car servicing done inside the building? Is anything done outside the building?
The conceptual plan is not entirely clear. It is conceptual. One of the things that did come up during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting was that they plan on accessing the service area back here from the alley. So you're going to have traffic servicing. The bay doors would be opened to the alley, which is then open up to the park in the rear. It also, in speaking with the town engineer afterwards, this would have to be set back at least 6 feet from the property line to allow a line of sight for when cars are exiting out of there. They have some room to be able to back out of the building and then look around and see if there's any traffic there.
Did they give us any rendering of what the back of the building looks
No,
like?
ma'am.
Okay. Councilman Magazine?
Yeah, I drove from the mortuary all the way down, and I counted, I wish I had it with me, something like 8 or 10 auto-related facilities. Maybe it was 7. I don't know what exactly. As far as I'm concerned, it's too much. It's just too much. It doesn't look good. It doesn't improve our town, and I don't see why it's needed.
Councilman DePorter?
I mean, I've seen the auto dealership we have here in town. Seems like they're doing quite well. I like the use of the land. I just being a frequent user of the park, I'd have to agree with the staff that not knowing how that building would be situated on that lot, or how it is situated currently, with those bay doors opened up on soccer nights over there. Quite frankly, the place is a zoo with kids all over the place and all over that parking lot, which is at night, and I'm sure the lot wouldn't be open. So I would just be, I would want to take more consideration as to how the building is placed and see more about safety and flow of traffic in that alley that is really also parking, alley/parking for the park.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. So I clearly hear and understand the fear of having kids around cars, but if we had a shopping center, we would have cars going and coming 10 and 12 hours a day, where a car dealership might have 5 cars a day, maybe on a good day. I mean, if you watch what's going on the corner where you're currently located, it's not a busy corner. It's not a real active type business, where a shopping center, I mean, we could only wish we could bring a shopping center to town that would draw that many cars. But I look at the corner, and then I look across the street at the filling station that has been closed now for about 5 years, and I go back and look at the corner again that's full of weeds and dirt, and it's not very attractive. And to have somebody come to town once again and offer to take a parcel of our town and make it new and fresh, I think we would be doing disservice to the town if we didn't do it. I do have a question. You touched on this, Marissa. Are they going to move from their existing lot to the new lot, or are they going to keep both lots open?
The intent that was communicated to me was they would have both lots open, and this site would service the vehicles on the existing property as well as the vehicles on this new property. I did have a little more staff report of things I wanted to share. I don't mean to no, it's fine. I
okay.
didn't know if you wanted me to continue or not with the information, because it's kind of relevant to what the conversation is up on the dais.
Sure, as long as you don't mind us interrupting you.
Oh, I don't mind at
occasionally.
all. I don't mind at all.
Okay, go ahead.
I looked at the strategic plan, and this is a little relevant to things that have happened recently in rezoning properties, and it is outlined in the strategic plan to, where applicable, if it's okay with the property owner to rezone, to downzone from an intense land use to a residential land use. And then rezone unplatted land, this is platted, for greater density and affordable family homes. Another concern that we have with rezoning this property is when you look at the uses for C1 versus the uses for C3, if it's not, if the development is not restricted to this specific business, then you're opening up all of the uses that are available in C3. And again, we would have to look at, or at least we should take into consideration what those businesses are and how they would affect the park to the north. One other thing that I don't have on a slide here is I looked at about 30 different parks that were approximately the same size throughout North Scottsdale, North Phoenix, Mesa, Cave Creek, and Apache Junction. And of all 30 of those, only 2 of them had any use that was different besides residential, school, church, or some light commercial, which would be like a restaurant or some little retail. One of those was in Mesa. Across the street was a natural gas facility. And the other one was in Apache Junction, and it had a public auction house and a marijuana dispensary next to it. Otherwise, the other 28 outside of a town had residential uses. So there's a little conflict of use around this, given what's existing there. Planning and Zoning recommended approval 4-3 at their meeting with a list of stipulations. If you want me to go through these, I can. They are part of the public record, and I can answer any questions about that if you wish.
Why don't you go through the stipulations?
As I stated earlier, instead of opening the door for any use in the C3, we're recommending that the property be used only for automotive sales, servicing, and detail, and it must be constructed in substantial conformance with the proposed site plan. It is conceptual. I know there are some questions. Additional restrictions could be put on that as council saw fit. We're recommending that the building permit be applied for within 6 months of the approval instead of having it have this zoning change on it into perpetuity to kind of give the applicant a nudge to move forward with the project. Dedicate a 10-foot public utility easement along the front and side street property lines. This is something that's not terribly unusual for development here in town, and this is something that the town engineer and I discussed, just to protect access to the utilities that may be located there. In addition, having a landscape buffer and a meandering sidewalk in those areas.
Does that sidewalk connect to any sidewalk?
Have to look at the picture again, I apologize.
Sometimes we make people put sidewalks in and they go nowhere.
Right. Okay, there is a sidewalk along Desert Vista Park right here.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't appear that there is a well, this is not developed, so there is no sidewalk there. Do you know if there's Justin, do you know if there's a sidewalk in front of Powell's or there is? Okay. So as development comes in, that's typically when we have them install sidewalks. Get back to the list here. Have extensive landscaping, have it installed where the trees are rather large from the get-go, given that there is that, the residential uses and then also the park nearby. Provide no parking signs on the Desert Vista right-of-way adjacent to this parking. And then behind the alley, behind this property, across the alley, as Councilman DePorter said, is parking for the park. And providing parking for park patrons only signs there so that we don't have their vehicles pulling out of the bays and parking there. It did, as I mentioned earlier.
Hang on a second, Marissa.
I'm sorry.
Councilman Tolis.
Thank you, Mary. I want to go back to the dedicated 10-foot public utilities easement and ask whether in the conceptual plans, is that already incorporated as in their design? Because that is a pretty small lot, and I would think if we're going to move forward to approve this conceptual plan, that we would want to allow the business owner to have as much of that parcel as possible for the use of the cars and the display, similar to the existing business that they have now. So would that in any way adversely affect their ability to park cars and to utilize that lot?
So in the C3 zoning district, as I've pulled up this table here, there is a front yard setback. That would be along Saguaro. It's the access road in front of them. There would be a 10-foot setback for the building. It wouldn't apply to the parking lot. We are requesting, though, as is typical, that they put in a sidewalk. And with the sidewalk, that's going to take up some of that room where they would not be able to have a parking lot. So it's kind of, and then along the Desert Vista right-of-way, they have a 0 setback. The B and the C are related to if it's adjacent to residential uses, and this, across the street from that is C2. So would it impact it? Potentially. Would we hold them to anything different than we would any other C3? Not really.
Did the developer agree to the stipulations at the P&Z meeting?
The developer was not at the P&Z meeting. Dave Montgomery, who is the engineer who helped draft this conceptual site plan, was not an official representative, but he did come up and speak at that meeting.
And what did he say about that?
He didn't address that.
Mayor,
Councilman?
Mayor, thank you. While I think it's nice to have the stipulation of sidewalks, in this particular area of town, it doesn't seem to me that any other businesses on that entire stretch of that street, of that access road, has any sidewalks at all. Is that correct?
Some of them may not, but they also were constructed prior to incorporation, and this is something that we do. We promote, and it is in the general plan to promote connectivity for pedestrian and bicycles. So new development is required.
Yeah.
Is the developer here?
Yes? Oh, okay.
Is there a possibility we could ask just a few questions? Of
Could you-
Dave or the developer, or?
Who wants to volunteer to come up to answer questions? Or you can both come up.
Excuse me, I was just informed by my director that all commercial parking lots do have a 10-foot setback from the property line.
Okay.
I'm Rex Foley. I live in Fountain Hills.
Hi. Okay.
I have a few questions here on the setbacks. We have a 10-foot right-of-way off the curbs. And then after that, we have a 10-foot for landscaping. That goes 20 feet from the road to where I can park cars, where the asphalt would be. If I take it completely around the building, there's going to be no room for inventory. It's going to be very, very small. I'm guessing probably 56 to 6,000 square feet for a dealership. I don't know how many cars I can get on there, but I know it's going to be very few. And the location I'm at now, I believe I'm about 20,000 square feet, and I can fit 45 vehicles in there comfortably. But on this new location, with all the setbacks and the right-of-ways and the landscaping, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to need some help here so I can have more asphalt to sell more inventory to generate more taxes for the town. Because we do make a pretty good living there on the used cars, and I know our taxes are high, but that's good. I'd love to pay as much as I can in taxes. It's part of business.
Questions?
Yeah.
Questions? Yes?
You're obviously, I mean, you've obviously done research, and you're not at least bit concerned about all of the other used car places along Saguaro?
Am I worried about them? What did you say? I'm sorry.
You clearly have done research, and so you're clearly not concerned about all that competition for used cars?
No, there is no competition.
There is no competition?
No.
Why is that?
It's just that we overpower everybody here. These are small little dealerships. They're not doing what we do. I've been in the business for about 30 years. I started out with a small dealership like I have here, and I grew it to one of the largest in the nation. I had it for 13 years, and I had buyers coming from all over the country trying to buy my place. And I was hit with offers where I had to sell. I was never going to see this type of return again.
Thank you.
So we just had to start out small. We're starting out small again, and we're going to build it up. Or I won't. My son will right over here. He's taken over. It's just a matter of 2 or 3 more years.
We have a question here from the Vice Mayor.
So we hear the concerns about the design of your building.
Right.
And the access onto the alley where, as you very well know, the park is an active park.
Right.
Would you be willing to work with us a little bit on egress on the building?
And bring it further in off the back
more than anything, I think the concern is actually entering the alley
Okay?
opposed to actually entering and exiting onto your own property. At least that's what I'm hearing. Am I hearing that correctly?
So bringing the building further into the property instead of being on like a zero line.
I think that we don't want garage doors opening onto the alley
Okay.
where the kids will be playing.
Okay.
And I would think that would be architecturally possible.
Okay.
I think where you're at right now, you drive in and back out, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
And I think that's pretty much the same philosophy as what we'd want to look at here possibly.
Okay.
Now, I can't answer your question on the 10-foot right-of-way and the 10-foot, please, Marissa.
Because at those numbers, go ahead.
As I stated right before I went and sat down and Mr. Foley came up, there is a 10-foot required setback for buildings and parking lots in the C3 zoning district. So that is something that would have to be taken into consideration. That 10-foot easement for utilities, the landscaping would be located in there, as well as the sidewalk.
But the 10-foot right-of-way accomplishes that? He's saying, I can't read you, I'm sorry, I can't read the site plan.
Okay, around the perimeter of the site, parking lot and buildings must be 10 feet set back from the property lines.
From the property line.
Correct. And in that 10-foot setback would be where landscaping, utility easement, and sidewalk would be located.
Okay, then help me here. Is the property line the back of curb? No? Dave? No? 10 feet? So there would,
It's set back a bit from the curb.
okay, yeah,
And then I'd have another 10 feet on top of that for landscaping.
That's,
So we're talking 20 feet, right?
yeah, that's the C3 zoning district requirements.
But are we getting, is he right, Marissa? Are we, oh wait till she's done. Are we talking about, are we talking about 20 feet before he can start asphalt here? Or are we really just talking about 10 all-inclusive of?
I'm going to request my director come up to help answer that question.
What does he know?
About trees too. I'd rather not have trees, I'd rather put cactus, it's just part of Arizona. I've landscaped my property, the day I bought it, I started working on the landscaping, I've got nothing but compliments on it. I'd like to do about the same type of landscaping as what I already have, instead of the trees. Trees bring a lot of debris, and it takes a lot of your vision away. When I first moved into my property, there was 17 trees. There was 17 big, huge plants, so there was 34 of them that I had taken out. Because you couldn't see the dealership with 34 plants and trees. You just couldn't. So I cleaned it up and it looks great, it compliments all the time. I think I've got a good running business here in town here.
I would think for security too. You don't want too much blocking, because you
Your
have
best
to.
security is Cox Communication, I've learned that.
Nah, well, yeah, but you want to be able to see police or
Yes.
anybody passing by can look right at
And
the
then
lot.
I lit it up, I put 7 or 8
Yeah.
bulbs in there just to keep the lot lit throughout the night.
So Bob, can we clarify this, how many feet we're
Clarify the
talking
10
about?
feet? You
Yeah.
have a 10-foot parking lot setback from the curb. It can be within the right-of-way, whatever, but it's 10 feet edge of pavement to the curb. So it's not taking up any more. The sidewalk, the landscaping easement, and all that is within that 10 feet as well. So you really only have a 10-foot buffer.
So it's just 10 feet, we're not talking about 10 and 10? Okay, 10 feet, we got that. Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
That'll give me a little more room, like for every square inch.
Marissa, what, other than the stipulations, how was the conversation with planning and zoning?
There were not a lot of questions different than what I'm presenting. I'm trying to think, you weren't here, so I'm trying to think.
No, Dave's saying no.
Was it pretty similar to the conversation we're having here, right?
Thank you.
Councilman Tolis?
Mayor, if it's appropriate, I'd like to ask our finance director if he has any sales tax figures based on the existing automotive dealership that Rex is already operating, and if that's something that could be shared as part of this discussion. And the purpose of that is, I believe that this council, now more than ever, has to do everything we possibly can to support business in this community and to bring business to this community that's going to have high-dollar sales, such as an automotive dealership. And Rex has done a tremendous job with his existing facility here in town. I think it is really, really well-kept, and he's been a good neighbor in that area. And I have no doubt that he will do the same with this facility here. I would like to see us do everything we possibly can to work with him and to move this forward in a way that's going to make it easy and build it as quickly as possible and sell as many cars as possible and as soon as possible.
I'd like to bring up one more thing.
If I could just answer his question really quickly. Councilmember Tolis, we are not allowed under state law to reveal any proprietary information such as individual car sales, tax revenue, so forth, on any of our businesses. So we really can't really bring that up or even discuss it, either in an open meeting or just you and I confidentially. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
But we do know that cars generate a lot of
Yes.
taxes.
And Mayor, are you required with the state of Arizona to file your documentation as to sales and what you're up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's public record.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
You'll see it off
the
your
tax
tax
generation is not, though. But people can kind of figure it out.
If I'm correct, I believe it's hotels and car dealerships generate more tax dollars for the cities than almost any other business.
Any other?
And I also wanted to talk about the no parking on, what road was it? On Desert Vista. I'll need some parking out there, because there's a lot of people that when they come into my dealership, they'll park on the side of like a Colony to park their car, and they'll just walk right on in. I see it all the time. And I would need some room there too. Because a lot of people want to park outside, because it's going to be a small enough lot anyway, so, I would rather have more inventory. I'm going to have a few spots for customers always. It's just mandatory. I've got to have handicap parking and stuff like that, which all makes sense. But I would like to see where I could get away with no parking on that one side road. 'Cause I'm going to have an entrance there and an entrance in front. That's what I need.
Thank you.
Marissa?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The reason for the no parking, one of the reasons for the no parking along Desert Vista right-of-way is line of sight issues. When you look at engineering and how we look at corners, stop signs, where drive aisles are coming in and out of properties, there really isn't an opportunity to have any parking along there. It might seem intuitive, though, for customers to park there, which is why we're requesting that the no parking signs be put there. And that's a safety visibility issue.
Isn't there parking further down along the side of the park there?
Yes, those are pull-in spots, like actually into the park property, as well as the ones behind this on the alley.
The angle ones?
Yes, they're on the park property. They're part of the park. They're not considered street parking.
Okay. The street just seems so wide that you can't park on it.
Yeah, it surprises me. I'm sure Randy's looked it over pretty closely.
Very
Yeah,
close.
that recommendation actually did come from him, so.
So I have one question. I understand that you're buying 3 of the 4 lots, and we're going to leave 1 lot beside Powell's, is that correct?
I'm just buying the end lot. I believe there's a total of 3 lots, am I correct? Okay, I think there's 3 lots in
Okay.
there. There's the small one at the end, and there's another small one at the other end, and then there's a double lot in the middle, the way I take it.
Okay. I've got it.
Any other questions? Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Okay.
Another thing also, we do close our business at 6 o'clock, so if you have families going to the park behind us, we close our dealership at 6.
Okay.
So give
All
us
right.
the opportunity when we
Any more questions for Rex or
Well, Mayor,
Marissa?
Mayor, I do have another comment.
Mhm.
I think it was about 14 years ago that the Chamber of Commerce, and Linda, you and I were on the board at the time, and we talked about that access road and redesigning that entire area, how you have the turn-in. And I just wonder whether staff could comment if this is an ideal time with a business such as this that is going to need the parking, is going to need the access. And that turn-in right now is a little bit tricky. And if we're going to have a business there that's going to be, we're going to do everything we can to create the environment to make them as successful as possible. Is there an opportunity to look at that now as we design this corner?
In my conversations with the town engineer, Randy Harrell, he also brought that up, that there has been this desire to vacate that right-of-way in front of these parcels for the safety issues that you were saying. He did bring that up as part of this project. It is not something that we as staff determined to put into the recommendations, but it has been discussed.
So, Mayor, what did Randy say, and what would be the process? Can Randy comment on that?
Randy is not here, but I will certainly comment on his behalf.
Justin?
Okay.
Yes?
Great, Justin.
Mayor, members of the council. The conversation that obviously started 14 years ago is that all of the property owners adjacent to the service road on Saguaro have to agree to take over and maintain and pay for the improvements fronting their property. And there was not a consensus at that time, and it had not been able, certainly not been able to reach one up till this time. So it requires the participation of each individual property owner so we can abandon the entire place. And so in turn, what that would do is provide all of that additional parking, and then they would have typical commercial driveway inlets in and out of Saguaro. But the stipulation here is that all the property owners have to agree to the acquisition and the improvements.
So don't we own that road?
Indeed, Mayor Kavanaugh, we do.
So why can't we just close the road and turn it into parking? Why do we need their permission?
They would have to pay for some of the improvements, and they would be acquiring that piece of property.
Well, can't we just keep it and use it for parking?
I'm not sure that I fully understand your question, Mayor Kavanaugh.
It's probably a Randy question.
If I understand it correctly, I think it's almost like an improvement district, the way it would be set up. We would probably be abandoning the roadway there, but in return for that, we can't give gifts of public money. So I believe that they would have to agree that they would maintain their portion that fronts their properties. And I believe what I heard from the Development Services Director, because this was something he and I talked about not too long ago, that there was a very big challenge trying to get the property owners interested in that. Because some had some desire and others didn't, and so it's either an all or nothing. You have to have everybody agree. It doesn't make sense to have partial parts of the road closed and
Right, I don't
others.
see that you're ever going to get all of them to agree, especially when they have to pay for it. I'm just thinking, is there a way that we could just, I don't know, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know.
Town public parking. You put spaces in, just like you have next to Desert Vista Park, and you design it in the same fashion.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, 2 points. One, if we were to abandon it by state statute, it does accrue to the adjoining property owner. And I think that's what Grady was talking about, when that land becomes part of the adjoining property owners, and if one parcel were to take that over and not have it as a driveway, but do parking or other development on it, then you start having pockets where you have an alleyway or roadway interrupted by a developed piece of parcel, and so there's no continuity. But we can definitely look at what can be done with the measurements there and how parking and the access way can be provided at the same time. The concern would be is if we turn that all into parking, then certain businesses may not have as clear of an outlet onto Saguaro, because they're going to be fronted with parking in that area, and we'll have to work out those issues.
Well, it would be good just to look at it, to let Randy look at it and see something other than the businesses taking it over, because I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Staff will take another look at this. Obviously, that will complicate this matter tonight, but we can
Right.
come back at a later time and bring it back to council.
Mayor, I don't want to complicate anything tonight.
You already did. Go
Well,
ahead.
I
Do some more.
think this is forward-thinking for us.
Absolutely.
And I think that this is the type of things that we need to look at
Oh, yeah.
to help those businesses on Saguaro to be successful. So.
I agree.
But we should not be stopping the discussion or stopping to vote on this evening.
I agree. Okay.
I also want to mention one thing,
Okay. One more thing.
one more. I bring a lot of people from outside the area. I'd have to say 75% of my business is brought in from the valley and around the area. And while this part of the town is growing, we're picking up more sales here. So it's bringing in a lot of people into Fountain Hills that have never been here. So,
Okay.
Make a motion.
All right, let me close the public hearing. Consideration of proposed special use permit as presented. Any further council discussion or comments? If not, I'm looking for a motion. Vice Mayor?
Motion to approve ordinance 1807, amending the town of Fountain Hills official zoning district map to approximately .36 acres located at the northwest corner of North Saguaro Boulevard and Desert Vistas right-of-way from C1 neighborhood commercial to professional C3 general commercial, case Z2018-02, subject to the stipulations in the report.
Second.
Okay, one of the stipulations was the trees, I think. He wanted to change that to cactus
And that
cactus and desert landscape.
and desert landscape.
that certainly doesn't give me heartburn. I would accept that as a change.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second, and maybe we'll do a roll call, Bev?
Councilmember Leger?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember DePorter?
Aye.
Councilmember Toles?
Aye.
Councilmember Magazine?
Nay.
And Mayor Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Mayor passes 4-2.
Okay, thank you, Rex.
Thank you.
Let's see, where are we? Let me find my place. Number 6? No?
No,
Done.
8 and 9.
Good. Okay.
8 and 9.
8, actually.
Purchase agreement.
All right, we're up to number 8. Consideration of cooperative purchasing agreement, C 2019-004, between the Town of Fountain Hills and Sunline Contracting LLC for pavement marking installation or removal in the amount of $50,000 with 5 optional renewals for an aggregate amount not to exceed $300,000. Justin?
Mayor and council, I'm going to have Justin stay up here because the next 2 items will be his reports as well. So go ahead, Mr.
Mayor
Weldon.
Kavanaugh, members of the council, this contract that is before you tonight for approval is to continue to maintain all of our pavement markings townwide. And I decided to take a look back based on some recent comments from members of the council in regards to the amount of these contracts and the total amount spent. So over the last 3 years for pavement markings, and we have done a considerable amount of pavement markings over that time, we have spent approximately $45,000 in a 3-year period. And in that 3-year period, we have managed to incorporate some very important safety measures on palisades between Golden Eagle and Sunridge Drive. You will all recall that as part of our, excuse me, and I just right now lost the name of the organization, the Leadership Academy. A part of that group came to us with some challenges related to wrong-way drivers. And so part of that monies over the last 3 years was spent on that. We have also, over those last 3 years, added additional striping and RPMs along Kingstree and Palomino and several other areas. And each one of them have resulted in a thanks from numerous residents because the pavement markings were beginning to fade. And so again, this is just to continue that. And our attempt and what we intend to do is try to maintain 20 to 30% annually, depending on the available funding and the need and the location for where these pavement markings will be placed.
And I don't think we've had a wrong-way driver on the Palisades since you put in those pavement markings.
I am not aware of one. We have certainly not heard directly, nor have we received anything that was received at Town Hall as a result of those improvements.
Questions for Justin? Yes, Vice Mayor.
If I heard the numbers correctly, we've spent approximately $45,000 in the last 3 years,
That is correct.
and now we're asking for $50,000 for 1 year?
We annually ask for $50,000 because we believe that is a good base number, and in the event that we need it, we have the ability to use the expenditure based on the contract.
Well, the difference between $15,000 a year and $50,000 a year is quite a bit, and that's what we're talking about. And I would like to think that we could refine that a little bit and utilize the balance of that $50,000, make it $20,000 a year, make it $25,000 a year, and let us have the other $25,000 to utilize somewhere else.
Understood. Would you like for us to have this contract amount revised for the annual amount?
If I may just jump in, I'm hearing the Vice Mayor, and I think you pretty much justified having a lower contract amount. I will tell you, in these situations where we have contracts, that does not mean we'll spend that amount, even though it may be in a contract, and it does end up going for other things like pavement and other things of that sort. So, but if the council's pleasure is tonight to reduce this based on the report from the Public Works Director to perhaps $25,000 a year, then we can certainly do that.
I had 66% of the people in the town of Fountain Hills tell me that they wanted to know where the money was going. And so I'm saying this simply because we are short-funded in so many areas. We know that we're short-handed in our staffing, and if we could redirect some of these funds into staffing and be realistic on the striping, it's not much. But you take that $200,000 times 5, and we've got $1 million. And I think 66% of the people told me that's what they want. So I think that's what we need to be looking at.
Understood.
Okay, any other questions, speaker cards? No. Okay. Vice Mayor, you want to put that in form of a motion?
I would like to change the contract amount from $50,000 annually to $20,000 annually and leave the 5-year option for renewal and reallocate the balance of the money at the town manager's pleasure.
Motion, second?
Second, just if I could request just a slight change in the wording. Instead of town manager's pleasure, that he bring it back to us.
And I think that's what needs to be done.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 6-0.
Okay, consideration of professional services agreement C 2018-095 between PowerTech Contracting LLC and the Town of Fountain Hills in the amount of $45,100 with $35,100 for annual traffic signal maintenance and $10,000 for emergency call-out services with 5 optional renewals for an aggregate amount not to exceed $225,500. Justin.
Thank you, Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council. This contract that we have tonight before you for approval has taken a considerable amount of time to reach this. Some years back, the town did not have a traffic signal technician, and all of the traffic signal maintenance and work was farmed out to a firm. They went out of business. As a result of that, a single member of the staff stepped up and agreed to be trained and start doing the maintenance on the traffic signals. Part of that was that the town needed to have someone else on call because it was not realistic nor safe to have that single individual on call and on the clock 24 hours a day. Unfortunately, for reasons that I won't go into a lot of detail on here tonight for personal reasons, this employee is no longer with us due to some health reasons. As a result of that, it was a decision based on staff with guidance from the town manager that we simply do not refill that position as a traffic signal technician, and that we instead farm out the entire annual maintenance, on-call, and emergency call-out services. And that's what's before you tonight. We did send out a request for proposal. 3 people attended the mandatory bin meeting. Out of the 3 people that attended the mandatory pre-bid meeting, only 1 of them submitted, and that is the one that we have in front of you tonight. That is PowerTech Contracting, LLC. A little bit of background on the company and the relationship with the town. They have been providing on-call, emergency call-out services, and staff support for our traffic signals for the last 3 years.
Okay, questions for Justin? Questions, comments?
I'd like to just point out something here. So as part of the budget process, we did do a substitution. We had a position that we were aware of that would not be filled, so we basically did a reduction of that position. And we replaced it with a street technician, which I was hearing there's more of a need for that type of maintenance type position. So even with that, there is still some modest savings with this. And what I really like about this recommendation that's before you tonight is we have not just one person, we have a firm that backs the town up whenever we need emergency support for traffic signals to go out after hours and on weekends. So this is the best of all worlds for our community, and it saves us money. So it's a win-win for the community.
When they do these traffic signals, I know I asked you this question several times. Can't they fix these lights so somebody presses the button and they don't have to wait all the way around that? Why can't people walking get preference?
Mayor Kavanaugh, and if I understand your question correctly, the PED phase at any traffic signal, regardless of the location, is the longest phase. And is that what you're referencing, is the amount of time it takes for the PED phase? And so we are governed by the law, dependent on the size of the intersection and the distance across, and lots of other things in regards to the PED phase timing. So all of our PED phase timing is extremely long. One of the challenges that we have, and we'll just pick El Lago and Saguaro, it is a very, very busy intersection with pedestrians and automobiles. What happens is our frequent walkers, as they approach the traffic signal, they hit the PED push button, and so they do not want to wait for that phase, but if there's no cars, so they'll go across. So usually that pedestrian is long gone, and so all the cars are waiting there, and it appears that they're waiting for nothing, but what they did was they crossed against the signal. We get a considerable amount of complaints about that.
Well, I'm thinking more of the Safeway intersection, because the kids walk from the school, and they push the button, and they have just so much patience to wait, and then they have to wait for the cars this way, they have to wait for the cars this way. It's a really long wait for a person to cross. So I know there's other cities that give preference to pedestrians crossing, so I've asked you that, I know.
We are
before.
certainly not discriminating against them, and it all depends on where we are at in the phasing. If the phase that's currently being served is timed out, then they will get their call much sooner. But it all depends on where we're at in the phasing. But rest assured, as soon as the button is pushed, the call goes in, and it's serviced as quickly as possible.
Justin, I'd like for us to come back at a later time and discuss that with the council, because I think that there's some interest on maybe there's a better way of handling the phasing at these locations.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, I'm satisfied with that. Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Bev, okay. And any council further discussion? If not, who would like to make a motion? Come on.
Move
Who?
to approve.
Thank you. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, 6-0.
Consideration of the Second Amendment to Cooperative Purchase Agreement C 2017-043 between the Town of Fountain Hills and Interwest Supply LLC to provide signs and hardware in the amount of $20,000. Justin?
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, this amendment is a continuation of a contract for signs and sign hardware that we already enjoy, and we anticipate that this will primarily get us through the majority of the 18-19 fiscal year, depending on how many signs we have damaged as a result of accidents or motoring skills.
Does this include adding new signs? Because I know you added a lot of do not enter signs to get people to stop going wrong way. So would this also be that, or it's just replacement?
This will cover the purchase of new signs and any replacement signs that are necessary.
Okay, thanks. Questions for Justin?
Mayor?
Yes.
Does this include the faded green signs that the sun does so much damage to, like Sunridge Drive was just recently replaced, and there's another one up on Shea. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, we've
Indeed, I
got some
do.
good news to report. Why don't you share that?
Mayor Kavanaugh and Councilmember Tullis, this is not that. So those are illuminated street name signs, and in fact, there was a contract passed for that previously, and they are starting that tonight. And so they are going to replace all of the illuminated street name signs that were worn, outdated, or failing at 10 of our 13 intersections over the next 10 nights, excluding Friday and Saturday night.
Excellent.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, then if there's no further discussion, we're just looking for a motion to approve.
So move.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh, if I may, speak to the clerk before I sit down. I
Absolutely.
would like to thank you, Bev, for your guidance and your education. I am absolutely indebted to you, and I appreciate your patience. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Consideration of Resolution 2018-30, approving the intergovernmental agreement with Maricopa County Animal Care and Control, Contract C 2019-011, relating to basic animal care and control services for July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019, in the amount of $19,698 for the first year, and subsequently with 2 3-year renewal options.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item before you is for this intergovernmental agreement that Maricopa County Animal Control provides for the community. We've had a long history of Maricopa County Animal Control providing services as needed. They come in when we have stray dogs. We've actually have had them step up enforcement at Fountain Park and Golden Eagle Park when we have complaints about dogs that are off leash. The really neat thing about this is that they enforce our local ordinances. And so when they're here, they're issuing citations. This also handles, I believe, or is it the sheltering, or that's a separate IGA? That's a separate one. So anyways, this is, I think, a very good value. If we were to provide this service ourselves, it would cost us considerably more than what is before you tonight. With that, I recommend approval.
Is there any limit to how many times we call them that they'll come out?
We have not found that to be the case. You know, early on, that used to be like a ration service. It used to be the predecessor to Craig was the person that was the point of contact with Maricopa County. But we have since given that to the Community Services Director since the parks are under her purview. And we have not found that that is a problem. In fact, we have not really seen any major increases as we have utilized this contract more.
Okay. Questions or comments? Councilman Toles.
Mayor, thank you. You had just mentioned that there's a separate sheltering contract, and I just want a question on that. Recently, there's been some changes, from what I understand, with the local Pals Inn and some of the nonprofit service organizations that were using their facilities for shelter for lost pets. And they've had a little bit of a falling out because of finances. I guess my question would be, looking at the sheltering, and were they previously bringing dogs to Pals Inn, and now maybe that's changing?
Councilman Toles, to my knowledge, the agreement for the animal sheltering was with Maricopa County, and any of the animals that were picked up by Maricopa County went to the animal control shelters in Mesa and the other location.
Yes, in fact, to your point, what happens is people might find these stray dogs on their own. They might see it in their neighborhood, and they've been taking it to PALS. And then PALS is really good. They'll shelter them, they'll try to care for them, and then try to do pet adoptions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have heard what you've said, because I do board my dog there, and I understand that they're having some challenges.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a completely different, this is, for those dogs, they keep them for a limited time while they're trying to find the owners. Obviously, PALS is a better option, because if they do not get claimed within a certain period of time, often they, or adopted at the animal shelter, then they often are euthanized.
And Mayor, if I could add, with the transfer of the animal licensing from the town to Maricopa County, the cost of the license fee includes the sheltering cost now. So there will not be a separate IGA for shelter with Maricopa County.
So this cost is going to be sheltering also?
No, this cost will only be for the animal care, calling out of the county to come enforce our leash laws.
What the finance director's indicating is that the other IGA that we will not be doing in the future was offset by the license fees that we collected here locally. But since we're not going to be doing that after July, the county will be collecting that, and there is not a need for us to pay for those services.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
No? Okay. Then I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Mayor, 6-0.
Consideration of Resolution 2018-28, levying upon the assessed valuation of the property within the town of Fountain Hills, subject to ad valorem taxation, a certain sum upon each $100, a valuation sufficient to raise the amount estimated to be required in the annual budget, specifically for the purpose of paying principal and interest upon bonded indebtedness, all for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending June 30th, 2019. Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council. That item before you is for consideration of the adoption of the tax levy, which is for the town of Fountain Hills. And like the other improvement districts and the facilities, Eagle Mountain Facilities District, this is actually for the debt service that we have currently for the Saguaro bonds and also for the community center and some of the refinancings that we've done of late. If you have any questions, we can bring the finance director up to explain in a little bit more detail what this covers.
Any questions? Speaker cards?
No speaker cards.
No? Okay, then. Someone like to make a motion?
Move approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Mayor, 5-0.
Consideration of ordinance 18-08, amending Town Code Chapter 9, Parks and Recreation by adding Article 9-6, restrictions on smoking in public parks, preserves, and trails, and declaring an emergency. Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, This item is brought to you tonight. This has been a little bit of a movement that's been going on around the country, and we've seen this in Arizona in particular. A number of communities have banned smoking at obviously public places like buildings like this municipal campus, which we have already. But of late, it's been occurring at parks and open space and trails. And the ordinance that we have before you would go ahead and prohibit this at our parks, our open space, and the trail system. Past few years, Mesa, Goodyear, Flagstaff, Sahuarita, Prescott, Somerton, San Luis, and Safford have all banned smoking at their parks. Our neighbor to the north, Maricopa County, has banned it also at all their regional park systems. They do have very limited areas where they do allow smoking, particularly in the vehicles, and also designated smoking areas within the parks. In addition to this, staff frequently receives complaints from residents that as they're walking in our Fountain Park, for instance, they're walking through plumes of smoke when there's people that are smoking. We also have complaints and also have observed cigarette butts in our parks that don't get picked up, and they're harmful to the animals. You know, we have the ducks and we have various other animals and dogs that will consume those. So for those reasons, staff is requesting council consideration of adopting this ordinance, which would prohibit smoking in our parks. Another, so that we're not being callous, we would also, through this ordinance, have the ability to have the community services director designate smoking areas within the parks and where that might occur. So there's the ability for the community services director to designate smoking areas, which would probably be mostly likely in the parking lot areas. We have found that in the past, when we have events in our park, there's frequently conflicts with people that don't want to have the secondhand smoke, you know, at events. Like, for instance, the 4th of July is a perfect example. We've had complaints about that in the past. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
And I think with the dry conditions, a lot of the cities are very concerned about fire. And we not only have the parks, but adjacent to the wash areas. And I guess we've all observed people just flicking their cigarettes when they're done with them anywhere. And especially this year, where we have such little amount of rain, we really have to protect the parks. Councilman Magazine.
You know, I can't oppose this, but it seems to be a nice to have. How in the world do we enforce something like this? I see somebody smoking in the park, what do? Do I call the police?
Well, first of all, it's going to take us to sign this, so we're going to do that. So it's going to be, at least people are going to be, there's going to be the awareness. We're going to get the public information out to the public on this. It's going to be something that the staff is going to have to work on. We're going to have an implementation plan, and one of the things that I'm going to call on the staff to do is train the staff to make sure that if we have park attendants that are at the park and if they see it occurring, they're going to have to nicely and politely ask people to refrain from smoking. It's not an easy thing to do because, you know, people are very indignant sometimes and don't like to be told what to do. But this is becoming more the norm. I mean, I remember years ago, it used to be some cities just prohibited it in restaurants and such, and then it took the state to do it, so there was a level playing field. I think eventually the state will do this, but I think enough cities have to do this to prohibit the smoking so that that happens eventually. But you're right, it's all about the enforcement and how is this going to happen. And it's no different than, I think, drinking in parks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we do that currently, and we tell people politely that they cannot consume alcohol in our parks.
Well, I think a really good comparison, too, is our leash ordinance, because we tell people they have to have their dog on a leash, that you'll see them running their dog and not have them on a leash. And so, you know, you can put up signs and hope that people comply, and then you can train the staff to speak to them about what the law is. And, of course, you're still going to get people that are going to be argumentative, but you can't not have rules just because some people don't want to obey them, right? I think it's for the general good that we have this.
I'm opposed to smoking, that's not the issue. I just,
Yeah, I understand.
You're right, it's not going to be an easy thing.
It's not. I mean, I think if you put up signs, like you put up signs, no parking, most people are going to see no parking here and they're not going to park. But then you're going to get the person that says, well, I don't want to walk, so I'm going to park there anyway. What are they going to do, tow my car? You know? So you just hope that people are decent enough that they see the sign, they respect the sign, and if we're providing a place where they can smoke, they know that that's a designated area. That's all I can say about that. And it's getting late, so I'm not going to say any more. So just make a motion then. Yeah?
Move to approve.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Mayor, 6-0.
All right, we already did 14, 15. Hey, look at this, we're up to the end. Council discussion direction to the town manager. Yes, we'll start with our letter I, announcement of the town council subcommittee that will review responses received in response to the town's legal services requests for proposal. Grady?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, you recall that we have a solicitation out on the street right now for RFPs for the legal services. That closes on June 28th. And my understanding is that the mayor has, in conjunction with a couple volunteers or people on council who have been volunteered by the mayor to serve on a legal services subcommittee. Staff, just to let you know how that process will work very quickly, the staff will review those proposals, ensure that they're in compliance with the specifications of the RFP, and that will then be forwarded on to the council subcommittee. And then what we're looking at doing is that we will then have the council subcommittee go ahead and weigh and come up with their top firms that they wish to interview, and then we will have a special session, most likely in September, for the purpose of interviewing the top firms that they wish to interview. And it will be with the principal who would actually serve as the town attorney, so that you have a chance to see the person, see if there's the fit there, and so forth. So that's the recommendation. I think the mayor wanted to talk a little bit about her subcommittee, because I believe she's got some activities already planned.
Well, we will have one, our first meeting would be in July, and I know that a lot of people on the council volunteered to be on the committee, and I do thank them all. So it was really tough to decide who to choose, but I decided to choose Vice Mayor Brown and Councilman Tolis along with myself. I chose those two because they are the only two left who are not up for re-election. So I thought that while I will sit on the committee with them, I would like the two of them to be primary in making the decisions, because for sure they will be the two that will be working with the new town attorney. And both of them have a lot of experience on the council, so everything worked out that way.
That's fair.
So I volunteered them, and then they said yes. Okay, the next one, report by the town manager on the status of the proposed EPCOR rate increase.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Last month, we had a letter that went to the Arizona Corporation Commission that our town attorney helped draft for my signature, that expressed the council's concerns regarding the proposed rate increase that EPCOR has requested as part of its consolidation of its service areas. Mitesh actually attended that meeting, and he's got a little bit more information he wants to share with you on this topic.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. There's not too much more to report at that meeting. We were able to submit our letter to get before the commissioners and the other parties that have intervened in the case within the time frame allotted by the court. But during that meeting, due to the staff, ACC staff availability and RUCO, which is the Residential Utility Consumers Office availability, both offices had been involved in a lengthy, unscheduled case in the weeks leading up to that meeting. So both sides actually admitted to not being fully prepared for a hearing to begin on the 14th of May. So the administrative judge postponed the hearing until the last 2 weeks of July. So during the interim, what's been going on is the parties have been reviewing the various documents and testimony that has been filed. RUCO has actually submitted a lengthy position piece opposing the EPCOR rate calculations and providing their suggested calculations of what their opinion is on what the rate should be going toward. But we have no definitive direction yet from the court because the hearing actually hasn't started yet. So at this point, the administrative judge is anticipating a full 2-week and potentially longer hearing. But we'll have a little bit more as July approaches and both staff and RUCO actually focus on this issue rather than the other administrative hearings taking place and get up to speed.
So what we'll likely do is, because of the summer break, when we come back in September, staff will give you an update on that. And if necessary, if we need to talk strategy and legal advice on this, possibly in executive session as well.
Okay, thank you. Report by the town manager on the process to fill the council vacancy seat.
Yes, I just wanted to report back to the council. There's been some interest in the community. As you're aware, with the resignation of Cecil Yates and his seat that became open and vacant, there's been interest on trying to fill that seat. And so it's very clear from the council that they want to do that sometime in September. So what we're going to be doing is, I did meet with Bob Burns from the Fountain Hills Times, let him know the process, which is we're going to be accepting letters of interest from qualified members of the community. That basically is very little in terms of qualifications. They need to be at least 18 years old, be a qualified elector, and a resident of Fountain Hills. And they're to submit letters of interest to the town through the mayor and council office by September 1st. Staff will then put these together, organize them, and then council will have an opportunity to review that, but it was made very loud and clear that the council would like to have a public process. So we will be coming back to the council outlining a public process, and then also the council's desire to do their own process after that has occurred. So right now, we're going to be promoting this during the summertime, so we'll have basically 2 months where residents will be able to get their letters of interest into us, and then we will be back in September going through some sort of a public process, and also having the council go through and make their determination as to who they wish to appoint. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilman Magazine?
Just a fine point. You said resident of Fountain Hills. I would hope they'd have to be a resident for the same period of time that anybody running for council.
That's, and when I said qualified electors, it's the same rules as if you were running for office. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Okay, then let's move on to 17. I don't think we have anything. And I know it's late, but I would like to say to everybody on the council and to the staff, and including Cecil Yates, that thank you for all the work that you've all done up to this point. We're not going to be meeting them this summer, but I know you're all still going to be kind of working for the town. And it's been great up to this point. We've done a lot, and I know that you dedicate a lot of time to this, some of you having full-time jobs also. So thank you very much to staff. Thank you, Mitesh, for all of your hard work and being with us. And wish everyone a good summer. We'll see you in September. I think that's the song, right? See you in September.
That's it. I have one quick one for staff. The amount of information we received just tonight as an example, is 417 pages. I will admit that I haven't read them all. I'd like staff to go back and take a look at how they present the information to us, whether we need every document, every exhibit, and so on, or maybe even have a list of those that aren't in there that we can request or something. But I just don't see the necessity to have all of the information that we've been receiving.
We will be more than happy to do what we can to reduce the paper and also the documentation. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?